accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is now 6 p.m. The following board members are in attendance: Allison Lasan, Angie Cox, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, Rhonda Timish, and Catherine Sells. Mr. Miller is unable to join us this evening. I have asked Ms. Lasan to lead us in prayer.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for all the blessings that you give us. Thank you for all the resources that we have. Please help us to be good stewards of those resources. Please help us to make good decisions. Please be with the children and teachers and staff this week and the rest of the year as they're learning. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. We'll get right to our cornerstones. I don't know who that is. Dr. Rapp?
Yes, our I statement for this evening is in student experience. I create safe and inclusive opportunities. We know that information went out to all of our community members and our families about all of our security vestibules and our new safety procedures in place. And then tonight we're going to have a safety task force update. So that's why we chose the I statement for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Rapp. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees must fill out a speaker's card prior to the meeting. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes, and the board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. I do not believe we have any speaker's cards, do we?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. We will then continue on in the agenda. Mr. Ball, you're up.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. This first item is the guaranteed maximum price on the Fine Arts project at 3 of our middle schools. Those middle schools are Arbor Creek, Briar Hill, and Downing. And this is the Fine Arts additions and renovations for those 3 schools. They have been reviewed by our Director of Fine Arts and Dr. Coburn. And we do have a guaranteed maximum price from core construction of $6,729,163. And Mr. Fight has worked with them and with the architects in the planning process of all this, and certainly be pleased to try to address any questions that the board might have about them.
Do we want to take questions on this now, or do we want to go on through all of the architect stuff?
Can we do each one this whole?
Let's do each one.
Do you mind?
No? Okay. Ms. Cox, would you lead us?
So I just have a quick question of, these are just renovations to the room, or are we adding any additions? Have we talked to the Fine Arts Department to see? I don't want anywhere we're missing things like we've done in the past with some of our schools, that if we need to do additions or add new features, we're doing that.
Right. Yes, ma'am. So all 3 of these actually do have an addition as well as a renovation. And yes, we've met with Ms. Drinkwater and with the campuses as well, and Dr. Coburn and their team to make sure we've included what we need in there. Really, our main guideline in the beginning was just the ed spec. And so this was one of those ed specs where once we developed the ed spec, we just looked at all the middle schools and said, okay, these need X amount of square feet of renovation and these need X amount of square feet of addition. That's really all the design work that was done up front before the bond was passed. Once we got in there, we really took a look to see what was needed in each individual campus. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
That's right. And Ms. Cox, I would say that these 3 campuses were chosen to be first because that was where the most crowded programs as far as fine arts programs are. So that's how these 3 were selected to go.
Any other questions, Cox? No? Ms. Timish?
And these will be done in the summer?
So the plan here would be to start with the addition this fall. and then roll into the renovation area next summer when the building's unoccupied.
Okay, so it won't impact students.
Correct. Right.
Thank you.
Ms. Lasan?
No, I don't have any, I can visualize that, which was helpful because I visited Harbor Creek, and of course my kid was at Briar Hill, and I saw where they're going to have it, so I can definitely visualize what it's going to look like and all that.
Ms. Crosby?
My only question is that we asked some of the other fine arts departments, I'll be blunt, at Arbor Creek especially, because while I know that the band room there is very crowded, I can also tell you that the choir room is very crowded and also does not have the risers, et cetera, that some of our other schools have. So my question is, when we're looking at these renovations, are we also looking at the furniture? I don't know how to describe a riser. Are we looking at those kinds of things at the same time? Are those included in that or not?
We are. We had discussions about the risers as well as the storage units that are in these areas. And so in some instances, we're able to kind of repurpose risers and storage units, and in others, we're having to purchase new ones. So yeah, we definitely have those conversations.
And so was the choir director, et cetera, part of those discussions for the design?
Yeah, I know that Ms. Drinkwater had conversations with each one of those people at those campuses before she came to our meeting. I remember the one, we had a feud with a bunch of people around the table. And I know certainly, I mean, to your point, Arbor Creek is a great example because we've got really flourishing fine arts programs there. And we could use a little more square footage. So it's really exciting from that perspective at that particular campus that this is on.
Thank you.
Ms. Hassett?
Forgive my memory. Are any of these campuses also up for a 20-year refresh?
These are not. So actually, there are no middle school 20 refreshes in this current fund.
So we won't have any other,
No, ma'am. No.
just really good thing. Thanks.
Okay.
And I think the only question I had is, are we doing any of the pre-testing for what I like to lovingly call the wacky walls
Right.
that we've encountered?
Great question. Again, this kind of goes back to the era that we feel a little more comfortable with. Most of these were the 90s, were built in the 90s, Arbor Creek, Briar Hill, and Downing. But certainly, if there's any question there, we will. These areas as well are typically built with masonry and not stud walls in the exterior and whatnot. So, but yes, we think we're fine, and we will do whatever testing we need to do to verify that.
Okay. Anybody have any other follow-up questions or discussion? Okay. If not, moving on, Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. This next item has to do with architect selection for the Bridlewood Elementary 20-year refresh and STEM Academy project. And as the board may recall, the 2017 bond program includes a $5 million line item for renovation of possible academies at existing locations. And this campus is also scheduled for a 20-year refresh, so it makes sense to us for efficiency and just consistency with the other academies that have been designed by Huckabee to recommend to the board that Huckabee be appointed as the architect for this project as well. It also makes sense to move up the 20-year refresh so that it would be done on a timeline consistent with the need for the STEM Academy. And so that's the recommendation that the board will be presented next week, is to select Huckabee for the academy design as well as the 20-year refresh. And Mr. Fite, I'm sure can answer any questions the board may have on this.
Okay. Ms. Timmich?
Thank you. Just as we work on this location for STEM Academy, has there been anything that we just really thought would be beneficial and work well in the other three, closer, all the other campuses that we're not so excited about now that the kids are in there and using the spaces? Is there anything that we might need to change?
I'm not sure if you've heard any feedback. I mean, I think
I haven't heard any feedback related to that. I walked with Ms. Phelps right after school started, actually, with Holzer, and there was nothing but great comments. I mean, that's definitely something we could circle back around and double check with Ms. Wooten and Ms. Phelps.
Just to make sure that now that they're actually using the space, sometimes for me, I know in my head something's going to work out great, and in practicality it doesn't flow. Thank you. That's it.
Ms. Lasan?
No questions.
Ms. Prosnick?
Are we moving anything off the 3-year project to make room for the 20-year refresh at Bridlewood? Or
I
are
don't-
we
I don't
just,
believe we
or are we
did.
just adding it on
No,
to
we're just
the- or
adding
just-
this.
We're moving it up just 1 year?
Yes.
And are we expecting the STEM cost to be less since we're already going to be in there for the 20-year refresh?
I mean, I think it'll be, we did the exact same thing at Valley Ridge
Right.
and Polzer, so I think it'll, and we, Donald was a standalone, and I think we kind of saw the prices were about the same. You do get some, economic benefit to having a painter already there and having some of the finished trades already there, but for the most part, the amount of work associated with the academies is pretty standard.
And, oh my gosh, I just forgot a question. He's so brilliant. Oh, if I think of it, I'll ask him.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Ms. Hassett?
To go along with Ms. Frosnick, so you're moving up the 20-year refresh for this one. Was this included in the last bond that we had just sold, or is this included in the next?
That's a great question. What we're trying to do is not necessarily tie the bond sales to a particular project as much as just the cash flow needs that we're projecting, which obviously have to do with the projects, but we're not specifically tagging a project to a bond sale, if that makes sense.
Right, but you have enough in the last bond sale to
We
cover
do.
this?
We believe we do, yes.
So it really will be within that last sum and not the next?
Yes.
Just curious, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Oh, Ms. Cox. Oh, my gosh.
Okay. So mine goes back with Ms. Prosnick's question. So you said probably not much savings, but really we're going to be in there for the 20-year refresh. So will we need part of that $5 million for that, or we'll already have it?
We've typically needed the portion of that $5 million for the STEM Academy. At Polzer and Valley Ridge, we needed those funds to help with the furniture costs associated. And
Okay.
just the extra pieces, we delete all the walls around the library and we kind of add the windows to the classroom spaces. And really it comes out to, I would say, from $500,000 to $600,000. So it's not a huge amount, but it definitely, we've had enough in the $5 million to be able to handle all these academies.
Ms. Sells, I remembered my brilliant question. Do we know what construction method we're going to use for the 20-year refresh?
We don't, so this is just for the architect
Right.
selection, but once we get a CM on board, we'll talk to them about, the method, their approach to the project.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Bob?
Thank you, Ms. Sells. This item is the recommendation for the architect selection for an emergency responder radio antenna systems. And what this project is we're finding as we work with the fire marshals in the various municipalities that they are one of the renewed emphasis on safety and security in light of the world events in which we live. Is the ability for our first responders to communicate effectively regardless of where they are. And so what we're learning is that some of our buildings, the type of construction that we have and just the density of it creates spots within the building where the portable radios or the handheld radios that the first responders who would be entering a building, that they're finding that the radios don't always work in our buildings. And so the request is that we begin putting repeaters or radio antennas as a part of our building so that it would guarantee that we would have effective coverage throughout the building as our first responders work in the buildings as the need may arise. And we've done this on a couple of the projects, new projects that we've done in municipalities, and that has really given rise to the discussions that, hey, those are needed even in buildings that aren't new. And so the recommendation here is to appoint Huckabee as the architect on this project because they do have experience designing these type apparatus for retrofitting buildings, both in LISD schools as well as other districts. And the proposal here is to begin with the 5 high schools to develop this capability and then work forward from there. And so, again, this will be a recommendation next week, barring instructions otherwise tonight to recommend Huckabee as the architect for this project. And again, Mr. Fight, be happy to answer questions the board might have on this.
Thank you. Ms. Lasan?
So we're selecting them here. When will we know, like, about how much it's going to cost for them to design this?
Well, of course, the way our architects' contracts are structured, their fees are all based on a percentage of estimated cost, and we don't. We need to go through the competitive process and get a construction manager on board to really cost out the design that's put together. And really, the architects will collaborate with the construction team, and it's not until we get the design done that we'll be able to estimate what the cost is, and then we'll know what the architect's fee is.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brosnan?
Would this be something that we could apply to the state to refund the monies for safety and security?
Certainly, we could.
Since this is a new project, I know we can't retroact to all the hardening of the school entrances. I'm just curious if this falls in that parameter.
It's certainly something we could investigate. We're not aware of any specific funding source at this point, but certainly we'll continue to look for that. And if you're talking about the House Bill 3,
Yes.
I think there's a good chance we could do that,
Okay.
Yeah.
but we'll investigate that.
Yeah, the good or bad part of the safety money that the state passed on to us, it's $9, I think $9 per student, which totaled up to about $490-something thousand, and we spend
A lot more.
20 times that.
I'll take the 490.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're not complaining about the 490.
Ms. Hassett?
Does this also include all of the other buildings, the aquatic centers, the career centers, even the administrative center? All of the buildings, or?
So this current project is just starting with the 5 high schools, and then we anticipate kind of expanding after that. But right now, we wanted to, as Mr. Ball said, we want to kind of take a look at how much this costs, how much effort goes into it, can this work be done during the school year, and really tackle those 5 high schools, and then look at what the next phase needs to be.
And how this originally came up, because this wasn't planned, was actually Chief Cancel and I had a conversation, and sort of, brought it up, and so I reached out to Randy and to Mike. So our goal is, let's see what's involved at our 5 high schools, and then we'll replicate it, and we'll come back to you after, we find out what's involved as far as process and cost, and then, but certainly we'll want it to work at all of our schools. We just prioritize our high schools.
So at this point, you believe that the 5 high schools can be covered under the 2017 bond, but you're not sure about the cost to do all of the campuses and all of the buildings?
I don't want to guess on the cost. I mean, I've been told, that it's not astronomical, but I don't want to guess that we can do, 68 campuses with leftover funds from the 2017 bond. So, but certainly we feel comfortable that we can get the 5 high schools done.
How about the athletic buildings outside? Those are also,
Well, we'll certainly,
great buildings
we'll want the capacity enhanced at all of them. Once
just
again,
curious
I
about
can't tell
all
you
of the other buildings.
until I
Kids
know
are-
what it costs,
Right.
what
our munchkins
what
are
the
there.
2017 bond can cover. We hope it can cover all of it.
Thank you.
Ms. Cox?
Well, I'm very excited about this. I think this is something we definitely need. So I'm curious on, do you know what a time frame or timeline it takes to facilitate this project, or?
I'm really not sure yet. That's where, once we get a CM on board and see, is this work that we can do? I'm hoping it's work that we can do during the school year, and it won't be very disruptive to the campus. If that's the case, then we hope to get it done, during this school year. I'd rather do that than wait till next summer. We'll just have to see. I'm not sure if it's a lot of overhead work and a lot of wire pulling and all that. Once we get somebody on board, I think we'll have a little bit better idea how disruptive it really is.
But we're going to push through as fast as we can.
Right.
Do it right, but get it done as soon as possible.
Ms. Timish?
Thank you so much. I agree with Ms. Cox. I appreciate that. And just curious, I mean, because I don't know. I know that I've heard that there's dead spaces at some of our football stadiums, but obviously that may be different than what the responders need. Are we going to check all of our baseball? I mean, just is it guaranteed that our tennis courts, baseballs, football stadiums are all able to operate? Or I mean, I don't know how all that works. I mean, so I just want to make sure that we're checking those areas as well, because heaven forbid, I mean, I just think we need to be prepared, especially for our football stadiums, when you have a lot of people there, that we would need to have access for our first responders in those areas as well.
Okay.
I mean, I'm asking, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, we'll check those. I think, from my understanding, there's a dead area as far as web and internet access, and then a difference in the two-way radio access. So we're going to check both. But I think as far as externally, I don't think first responders have complained. It's when they get inside of a wall, and they can't communicate with each
I
other.
don't know how they check, but if they have some machine that
We'll
they can
check.
easily just walk it, I would love that.
Sure.
Because if we're going to touch the 5 campuses, I want to make sure that they are. And then the other just quick question, so if and I know it's kind of been designed, but for the Hebron multi-use facility, so we're not retrofitting, can we just make sure that I don't know if they can look at it and ensure that there's no dead spots, but as they're building it, to make sure that there's no dead spots.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. And I think my questions were kind of along the lines of the Hebron multipurpose, but along the lines of the New Tech West.
Right.
Is this part of
It was-
what's already going in there, or is that something we have to go back and look at?
So it was not originally, this is all pretty new. Now, we have put them in, we're putting them in at Old Settlers, Vickery, and at Mill Street, per the request of the fire marshal in those areas. But I feel certain that we can probably add it to the Hedrick and Tech West projects, just with the contingency funds that we have. I think we could cover those.
Okay.
So,
And then our high schools are built very differently than some of our elementary schools and things, and safety is priority, but at the same time, I don't want to spend money if we don't have to, so I would love for there also to be testing to make sure that this equipment is needed
Absolutely,
before
right.
we actually just go out and blanket cover everything.
Absolutely, and that certainly is a component. The testing is definitely a component.
Okay.
When the subcontractor that performs this type of work, they come in and help with the testing. Right now, what we're going off of is, like Dr. Rogers said, just comments from the city on what they've seen when they go out and hit their radio. So we know there are some areas of concern. Whether that's the entire school or not, we'll find out with the testing.
Okay.
So.
But when you say our 5 high schools, are you talking about the 10 buildings
Yeah.
that comprise all of our high schools? I just
Yeah.
wanted to kind of get
Yeah.
some clarification on that.
No, that's absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
One more question? How about the Vickery addition? Is it too late to?
No, that's one where we are adding it, actually, yeah. So part of the walkthrough, because it's a storm shelter, the walls are even thicker.
Right.
And so the reception's even more, so we were asked to put one in there. We're doing that as part of the project. It's not installed yet, but it's on the way, so.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. This item, this item comes along every 2 years. The district has the opportunity to nominate candidates to serve on the board of directors of both the Denton Central Appraisal District and the Tarrant Appraisal District. And both of those entities have 5 directors that serve 2-year terms. All of those terms expire at the end of calendar 2019. And so the board has the opportunity to nominate individuals to serve, to appear on the ballot for those slots. And attached to the notification of that is the distribution of the votes among the taxing entities. LISD has 1,328 votes out of a total of 5,000 that are available. That's 26.56%. And in considering an individual for nomination, the eligibility requirement is that the individual must reside in the appraisal district for at least 2 years immediately preceding the date that individual would take office. and employees of the taxing units are not eligible. So those are the primary eligibility requirements. And the information provided has the current list of the directors, and certainly any of those are eligible, provided they still meet the residency requirements. Any of those are eligible to be renominated. So that's the background information, and certainly this is a board item to determine who the board would like to nominate, and so we certainly stand ready to communicate to the appraisal district the board's desires. And the deadline is a statutory deadline that the appraisal district does not have the flexibility to alter. So, and that is October 15. So that's the background on this item.
Okay.
Be ready.
Yes, so be ready. Anybody? Ms. Crosby, any questions or comments or anything from anybody? Okay.
I would just say that anybody who's interested needs to contact the board.
Yes. Perfect.
Did everybody receive the email from my husband?
Yes.
That he was happy to serve and stepping up? Want to make sure we all know.
Okay.
He doesn't want to be nominated.
So we will be ready for that nomination and those nominations. Thank you, Mr. Roth. Anything down there?
Ms.
Yes.
Hassett, I'm sorry, would you just clarify what you just said, because I couldn't hear you. About your,
My husband is
Mr.
on the
Hassett.
appraisal board, and he is stepping down. He's been happy to serve 4 years, and has said that he is stepping down, so he would prefer not to be nominated again
Okay,
for the position.
yeah,
So,
that's the way I understood it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, Employee Services, Dr. Bonner.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Sales. Board member is bringing tonight to you some information on Academic Calendar Committee. You'll recall from years past that we pulled this committee together in September. We have approximately 30-plus members on the committee, comprised of teachers, parents, campus administrators, a couple of district administrators, and 5 junior students who give us input on the calendars that will control their senior year, one from each feeder pattern. The committee members are representative of all campus levels and feeder patterns, so it's membership from across the district. As you'll recall, last year we got input from you all, and I want to go over that in just a second, but just generally speaking, we will meet in October. We have 4 meetings scheduled to pull the committee together with the purpose of presenting calendar options to the board later this semester and also the community. Excuse me. We will also give information to and seek input from the Principal Advisory Committee, the district leadership team, and the Council of PTAs later on in the fall as things kind of congeal. The other thing I'd like to say before I go over just the things that we discussed with the board proper last year, you know, there are some guidelines that we're gonna adhere to. The state requirement for instruction is 75,600 minutes. We always put in a couple of bad weather days at the state direction. We include holidays for Labor Day, Thanksgiving, winter break, MLK Day, spring break, Good Friday, and Memorial Day. We include a couple of possible holidays, just kind of depending on what the committee proposals are of Columbus Day and Columbus Day and President's Day. And then last year we had calendars which consisted of 176 instructional days, comprising that 75,600 minutes plus. We had 8 professional learning days, 3 work days, and 2 bad weather days. And so if I may go back up, because I think what we wanted to do this evening was just get if there was any further input from the board on what you all would like to see in the calendar. Just as a reminder, last year your guidance to us was that we wanted to maintain the current school holidays. We wanted to construct a calendar with an early start date. We wanted to look at a midweek beginning to school start. We wanted to have a 5-day Thanksgiving Day break. We wanted to look at 2 full weeks for winter break. And then lastly, we wanted to consider different calendar options for spring break. So that's the feedback we got last year, and certainly wanted to hear if there was any different or alternative feedback for the committee to consider as we get into things in October.
Ms. Hassett? Do you have a question?
If you could highlight and underline the midweek beginning, I just find that very advantageous to all involved as school starts, so that's a bold word.
We'll do it.
Ms. Scott?
No questions.
Ms. Timish?
I'm curious because I know that the calendar committee landed on the kids anyway. That Wednesday start date was a little bit better, and I know over the years we flipped between Tuesday and Wednesday. How was start date this year for a Tuesday? Anything?
I think the number of days,
Just
just the way it worked out, it would have been Wednesday if the days would have fallen right.
okay.
But
I think that's correct from my recollection. I think we did have a Tuesday, it's been a year.
I know.
But I think we did have a Tuesday, Wednesday start, but the Wednesday would have maybe pushed us back after Memorial Day, if I remember
Which is-
correctly. I can look into that,
We
but
know
I
we
think
don't
that's
know.
right.
I really appreciate having it
Yeah,
before
I
Memorial
think-
Day, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I just was curious. So that answers my question.
You're making me wonder now, so I'll look into that. either
All
way.
right. Thank you.
Sometimes calendars work out according to when holidays fall, what day of the week, and so that's where day here, day there sort of gets you. So I think
And I
that's
think
what
we
it
have
was.
leap year this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do.
I wonder how that affects it.
Better write that down.
Ms. Lasan?
I don't particularly have any questions other than just a comment. I did hear from, I can think of a couple of principals and teachers that said how much they loved the schedule. I guess because this was the first year we actually got to feel the effects of getting out on Memorial Day and coming back, having the decent summer, and it was pretty well liked. So I think the calendar's great.
Ms. Prosney?
The only direction I would give is that I really want that first semester to end before winter break. I think that is, I will tell you, it's one of the reasons that I voted the way I voted for District of Innovation, so that we could have the early start on the calendar. So that is some, if you're looking for direction, that would be mine.
Thank you. Ms. Hassett? Oh, we started with you. I'm not looking at my paper. I'm trying to get my thoughts. I actually concur with Ms. Prodznik on getting out before winter break. It's such a relief for our students to not have that stress of 2 weeks of just downtime when they're forgetting and then coming right back and having to cram again for that test, and that would be my only caveat there. And I also talked to teachers and principals, and it's amazing. I think probably all of us have walked a hall, and somebody came up to us and said, "We love the calendar." From parents, I've had parents reach out, I've had students reach out, and I've had teachers and principals reach out. And so sometimes we don't see the effects until it's actually in place, but I know, at least from my personal standpoint, it served our family well and my student. So
Good.
Anybody
We'll do our
else?
best to replicate that.
Yes.
No pressure.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right. Okay, Dr. Bronner, you're still up.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. We also have this evening some feedback for the board on Panorama, and I'm going to vamp for a minute while Dr. Courtney Hart comes up to visit with us about that. Courtney has done the past couple of years an excellent job in managing and leading the Panorama process, from interaction with the company to roll out to campuses. And she's got some slides tonight on last year's results, and then also toward the tail end of that is going to coordinate with Dr. Coburn on a couple of little odds and ends. So, Dr. Hart.
This is our second year. Last year was our second year. This will be our third year using Panorama. Several years ago, in the beginning of 2017, 2018, we selected Panorama from a large group of vendors. The reason for that was because they are, among other reasons, an educational company. So all of their surveys are aimed at educational organizations. In addition to that, we liked their price point, and it's always nice to work with a company who has so many former teachers on staff. So that's something we enjoyed about Panorama. Our timeline last year in year 2 looked a lot like our timeline in year 1. So before the winter break, what we did was we just kind of gathered that information, you know, who's in what group, communicated with people, verified. Right after the winter break, we sent out some communications to staff. Hey, there's a survey coming. There was an email from Dr. Rogers. There was an email from me. And then we took the survey. There was about a 2-week window. We launched it at the end of January. The window closed in February. Then we gave results out to principals and department heads at the end of March. And then last year we took an additional step. 2 years ago what we did was we said, hey, principals, department heads, share out this information. And then last year what we did was we just went ahead and had Panorama generate an email out to all employees of Lewisville ISD. So it just went out directly. Just took a little bit off the plates of principals and department heads, one less email to send, a little bit more transparent, streamlined things a little bit. So one of the things that we always talk a lot about with staff, with particularly principals and department heads when we're sharing survey information is what do we do with this? What is it and what is it not? So one thing that it is that's really helpful is it's a look into some perceptions. Like, hey, here's some things that people might be thinking. You know, it kind of sheds some light on things. It's really helpful as a good jumping off place to ask more questions. What it doesn't do is give us definite answers. So it kind of shines a spotlight on some things, but it doesn't tell us, hey, here's what your next step is. That's up to us to kind of ask those next questions, find those next steps. So it's not evaluative, it's not a finishing spot for anything, but it's sort of a jumping off place. So anytime you're looking at survey data, what's interesting is that there's questions, and especially in employee data, where it can be employee engagement versus employee satisfaction. So employee satisfaction questions are really going to dig into, hey, are you happy? Are you feeling content here? And employee engagement is going to ask, how committed are you? How do you feel every day when you walk in here? Does that make sense? So Panorama kind of straddles right in the middle of this, and why that's important for us is because we have a lot of organizations under our umbrella, so we're kind of trying to reach out again and shine spotlights as far as we can. We're trying to spark those questions, if that makes sense. So initially, 2 years ago, we looked at a whole bunch of questions. What we did was we brought in a large number of stakeholders and we said, hey, what are the things we should ask questions about? And these are the areas that they said we should ask questions about. So we did. You can see there's 2 groups here. There's instructional staff, so we have teachers and instructional aides, right? So that's your staff that's right in front of the students. And then we have another group. We have the non-instructional staff and district office staff, right? So that's assistant principals, counselors, district office. So they had 2 question sets, and what we did last year was we narrowed down. So we took that information from 2 years ago and we said, okay, let's go ahead and focus in. So what we decided to focus in on last year was leadership and climate for everyone. And then for our instructional staff, we wanted to focus in on educating all students because that fits really nicely with our cultural proficiency goals. And then with non-instructional staff, what we looked at was feedback and coaching. So this is what it looks like when you take that survey. There's going to be a question, and it asks how you feel about it, and then you get to pick from 5 responses. So how optimistic is the student body when they walk through the doors every day, right? Extremely optimistic, quite optimistic, somewhat, slightly, not at all. So you have those 5 answer choices, right? And it's going to look like that on every question. So how supportive are your colleagues on Tuesdays, right? Extremely supportive, quite supportive, somewhat, slightly, not at all. So it's always going to have you answer from a question set that looks just like that. And what Panorama does is they give us information on what they call the favorable responses. So Panorama considers those top 2 responses favorable. So they're saying, hey, if you chose extremely or quite, we're going to call that favorable. If you chose somewhat, we're considering that the neutral response, so they're not adding that into their percentage. So we're going to look at an example. So on most days, how enthusiastic are the students about being at school? Well, you can see here extremely enthusiastic, that's 11%, and quite enthusiastic, we're at 45%. So we have a favorable rating here of 56%. And why I think this is important is because I always want to see, okay, how many? Was it like 40% that chose, not at all enthusiastic? And this is where you get to look at those answer choices and go, oh, okay, 34% chose somewhat enthusiastic. So if you include that 34% in, suddenly we're up to 90% on this question. So here's another example. How positive are the attitudes of your colleagues? So extremely and quite, those top two areas in the green, you can see we have a favorable rating of 55% on this question. And then again, that's somewhat positive, we're at 30%. So I always just kind of want to look at that jump. What do those next options look like? So there were also open response questions. These were the open response questions we asked. You can see the response rates on those. And the reason I don't have results on those is because it's exactly what it says. It's open response, so we don't have favorable, not favorable. It's just people talked. So here we have the district office staff results. So we're going to go over these results in three groupings, right? So district office staff, you can see we have 966 responses. And we ask questions in those three survey areas, right? So leadership, climate, and feedback and coaching. Those are the areas we focused on with the non-instructional staff. So you can see that for district leadership, for all of the questions asked about leadership, for all 966 responses, 74% were in those top two answers, right? And then you can see over there on the right side, it says change since spring 2018. So 2 years ago, we were 6% lower. So 2 years ago, we were at 68% in that category, and this year we came, or last spring, we came up 6%, if that makes sense. You can see district office climate came up just 1%. Feedback and coaching had a 7% gain, so that's always nice to see. Now this is our campus non-instructional staff. So this is a different group. So now we're at the campus, and we're talking about people who are not in front of students all day long, right? So you're talking about the assistant principal, the nurse, registrar, attendance clerk. So you can see we have 673 responses here. And again, they were asked questions about leadership and about climate and about feedback and coaching. You'll see one thing slightly different on this screen. So Panorama has question sets that are written for us, which is really nice. They're pre-tested, but they've done all this work, but they are specifically for people in buildings. So when we're asking questions of district office people, they don't really have those written. So when you have a question that says, you know, how positive are the students in the morning? Well, I don't know. There's 53,000 of them. I don't know how to answer that question. So for district office staff, we changed that wording slightly. So to make it fit for people who are at the district office, well, anytime you change wording, they don't like to compare against national norms because they say, well, it's not apples and apples anymore. So whenever we're in the campus non-instructional staff results, it is apples to apples. So what they gave us here that's extra is a comparison to everyone who's taken this question set nationally, which is nice to see. So in school leadership, you can see we had 79% favorable responses, and we're in the 80th to 99th percentile nationally on this question set. And there were mostly, in this entire survey area, there were mostly no changes over the past 2 years. And then our last group is campus instructional staff. So campus instructional staff is by far our largest group, 3,501 responses, and that's because this is every classroom teacher and instructional aide, right? So again, we have the climate and the leadership question sets, but we have that different question set here that's educating all students. So again, you can see the percent favorable there, and you can see the comparison to the national norm. And then you can see what did it look like from year to year. So we're up 2% educating all students, and then we're down a little bit in school climate, down a little bit in leadership. And I thought if there was anything we would want to dig into, I don't know about you, but my eyes went right to the red. So I thought, well, let's dig in a little bit on the red and let's see what those results look like. So we're going to look into school climate. So I selected 3 questions here, questions that would jump out at me. And kind of what I did was I thought, oh, if I was looking at this, what would scare me? Well, that 55% set my heart aflutter a little bit. So I thought, well, let's pull that question and look at that. So this is actually our second look at this question. It was one of my examples from earlier. So how positive are the attitudes of your colleagues? So you can see that we have a 55% favorable response set, but again, made me feel a little bit better when I looked and saw, okay, where exactly are all those other responses? Well, 30% of them are sitting in somewhat positive, so that brings it up quite a bit. 12% are at slightly positive. So again, just a little bit more information. It's always good to dig a little bit deeper. If we move on and look at question 1, again, this is the second time you've seen this one. This is one of my examples from earlier. On most days, how enthusiastic are the students about being at school? So we have a 56% favorable rating on this. You can see 34% of that is sitting again right at that next option down. And then the last one I looked at, and this one drew my eye because I thought with the LISD Be Kind initiative, it just seemed very prescient. So how often do you see students helping each other without being prompted? So you can see 55% chose frequently. That's actually a really high number for any one answer selection. And then 24% were there and sometimes. So if you were to add that in, again, that would take that number fairly high. So if we were to look at the next question set that kind of draws the eye here, school leadership. And again, these are the instructional results, campus instructional. So once again, what I tried to do was just identify 3 questions that I might be interested in looking a little bit more into. What are the answer choices? So when the school makes important decisions, how much input do teachers have? Well, this one drew my eye just because of that number 4. I thought, oh, that feels low. So once again, a tremendous amount of input. You can see 13%. Oh, that's at a distance for me. I'm going to go backwards. Oh, that's much better. 13%, quite a bit, 34%, but then 31% are sitting at some input. If we look at question 6, how responsive are school leaders to your feedback? We have a 63% favorable rating. And you can see 22% is sitting there in the somewhat. And then if we look at question 1, how positive is the tone that school leaders set for the culture of the school? And you can see we have 18% sitting in that middle, in that neutral area on that one. And then if we look at the last question area, educating all students. So I chose 3 on this one. But again, just kind of drew my eye. I always find it interesting when we have no change. That seems difficult to do with 3,501 responses. And this one had no change from the past year. So how easy do you find interacting with students at your school who are from a different cultural background than your own? You can see we're already at an 89% rating, but 10% selected that neutral area in the middle. And I'll tell you what I also find interesting about this third question set is when teachers are answering questions about students, you'll notice that they just generally tend to answer a little bit higher, which always makes me feel nice. And then if you look at question 3, how knowledgeable are you regarding where to find resources for working with students who have unique learning needs? So this one's interesting in that we have a 4-point gain from 2 years ago. And then on question 4, if students from different backgrounds struggle to get into your class, struggle to get along in your class, how comfortable would you be in intervening? And again, you can see we're at 14% on that neutral area right in the middle. So Dr. Coburn, I think, is going to talk to us a little bit about what the next steps were after we got this data back.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hart. And as Dr. Hart mentioned earlier, it's not an evaluative tool, but certainly we use it in our evaluative process in terms of understanding where we are and what this data means. One of the things that I enjoy doing maybe more than any is going over how to interpret some of this data with the principals. And I put my own data up there for all the principals to see, good, bad, or otherwise. And one of the things we talk to them about is that sometimes you can interpret an answer, especially as your number gets smaller, and go, well, gosh, it might view that answer favorably, but an individual respondent may not. How does a respondent view their answer like that question 9 that you had a couple slides back about the amount of input that they get on decisions? Well, some people say, gosh, I wish somebody would just make a decision. And so they're viewing very little input positively. And so one of the things we challenge our principals to do is to look at their data, really contextualize it to their campus and to the growth that they've done with TPES goals, everything that they do with their assistant chiefs, to figure out the best way to incorporate Panorama into an I statement that that goes directly into their campus improvement plan. Every campus is required to have something in their campus improvement plan that is directly linked from their panorama, but it doesn't say use your lowest panorama answer or use the panorama answer that has the most red. It is find something that is an area that you've tied these multiple pieces together, as we've tried to do, to create a place that aligns with district improvement plan, aligns with cornerstones and I statements, and creates some meaningful change that can come from your panorama. And then when they bring that to their building leadership team in a very transparent way, because those building leadership teams see every aspect of that campus improvement plan, the intent, and we hope, and we feel like we've been pretty successful, and I'm going to kick it to my three colleagues over there who can kind of talk to you about some of the individual conversations they've had, but it really makes it a little bit more actionable in a way that is aligned across the district. Yeah, if you guys want to come up, I know that they thought it might be best to give you some anecdotal evidence. I mean, what happens with a principal? They come to their assistant chief. They want some input about their panorama and kind of what happens. So we'll let you guys take it. You need a microphone? Pass that over that one. Yeah, you do. You're being recorded, Miss Lewis.
Pass it down.
I think it's important, first of all, to note that our principals are always looking at different aspects of data to determine and reflect on their own work as a campus, whether it be campus profiles, discipline data, teacher, just the panorama. So we're constantly having conversations with our principals, first of all, just in regards to data. But thinking to the panorama specifically, we really, in our principal university, first of all, try to model with our principals what those conversations may look like back at their campus. And so when we got in my group, as far as middle school principals, when I worked with them, we pulled our data first as a group and talked about strengths that we were seeing across campuses, and they were kind of looking at their own data. And then we looked at areas of, targeted that needed to be improved. And we were looking for common themes across middle schools, first of all. And so we really targeted discipline, PLC work, and campus voice. And so those were three areas that really were brought forth across all middle school campuses. So we talked about what that might look like as far as conversations back at the campus with their own teachers. Once we... that was more of an activity we did as a group. But then when I went back with my individual principals, we really broke down and looked at their data specifically and what was going to be their focus on their campus, which could have included some of those targets. But campuses did some really great activities, one specific, because you have to create an opportunity for ownership within the teachers. And so those conversations are so important because they have to reflect personally. If you look specifically at the questions, which was something we really looked at as a group, is what are the teachers saying in their comments? Because that told us a lot specifically about some areas that we really needed to focus. And so we had more of those specific conversations when I got one-on-one. And then that led to what that work was going to look like with their teachers. And so some gallery walks and teachers really identifying strengths and areas that needed improvement, and then taking that back to BLT, like Dr. Coburn had shared, to get improvement of what those will look like how to address those.
We did a lot of the same things in elementary, but one of the things I want to talk to you about, we work with a group of principals that just want to extend their learning and leadership, and so we work with elementary, middle, and high. And we had the StrengthsFinder 2.0 people come and spend the morning with us soon after we had received the panorama results. And so everybody did the StrengthsFinder portion again, and then that afternoon, we took the panorama results and used a critical friends protocol and did an analysis of what do your strengths look like, and what do you see in your panorama scores? And then some of your lower areas, how can you bring those up? So we looked at it just through a different lens and made it a little bit more personal. And we really looked at that school leadership part and the school climate part. And And we did that back in the spring, and it was just really a personal journey for them. They got to share with each other and things like that, and just extend some of those leadership practices. So, like I said, we did a lot of the same thing in elementary, but that's how we extended it even farther.
All right. We last year we used just a regular PLC format with the high school principals, and fortunately they're a pretty tight-knit group, so they shared their data with each other. They didn't have any problem looking at each other's data and talking through. And one example that I wanted to share, almost all of the principals' data on leadership was really similar, and certain questions like how effective are school leaders at developing rules for students that facilitate learning, how much input do teachers have on the school rules, how much input do teachers have on the goals, when a school makes important decisions, how much input do they receive from the teachers? And all of those were really low, except one, and we had a new principal at that school. So we said, well, what did you do differently? And he said, well, I looked at last year's panorama data and knew that this was an issue. So I started every faculty meeting with a QR code, and I asked them what's going well and what's not going well. And the teachers talked about duty schedules, pep rallies, safety drills, lockdown drills, advisory lessons, grading policies, e-portfolios, and let them just put whatever they want, and they could do it anonymous, or if they wanted feedback, they could put their name to it. And he said we personally responded to every one of their concerns and just made everything much more transparent. And his scores were off the chart in this area as far as getting teacher input on how the schools run. So all of the other principals have incorporated that this year into their faculty meetings and how they're doing things. So it was just an immediate positive result that we had.
All right. Ms. Timish?
All right.
Oh, Ms. Cox, I mean. This is crazy. I thought she was pointing to Ms. Timish, so I'm sorry. Ms. Cox.
Are we asking all of our questions or just one at a time, or how would you?
Let's do one at a time.
Okay. So I really like this because I'm not a Gallup poll fan, as I have voted against it on several occasions. So I really like the way they did these questions. So my first question is I was a little disappointed to see that resources were left off, because I feel that we need to know what resources our teachers need. And so I was curious why that question was left off.
And Court.
So when we were looking at what areas we wanted to focus in on, I think one of the big concerns was getting as much as we can that aligns. So we wanted to get that leadership piece and that climate piece in. And then with teachers, the one piece left, the other thing that we were battling was not too many questions. So resources was a consideration, but we ended up going with the one that was most closely aligned to cultural proficiency. That's why we went with educating all students overall cultural proficiency.
And Courtney, so
Yes, sir.
going into this year, will it stay that way, or is that something the committee will?
I think we've talked about what we would like is for it to stay the same at this point, and the reason for that is because it gives us that long-term view of the data, and we can start to see, do we have any trends? So we would like for it to stay the same in year 3.
Okay. Ms. Timish?
When we're looking at specific campuses that maybe had lower scores, was there any connection to maybe a higher turnover rate at the summer with like lower camp not being as happy with the climate and then campuses turning over?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, we did. I mean, there are certainly trends that you can find in the data where you say, okay, well, when we're a little lower here, you're going to get higher turnover. We looked at trends. Are you a new principal? Kind of what Andy had mentioned there earlier, or have you been there a while? Certainly, the people that had been there more than 1 year had comparative data to look at. But yes, we did. And again, this is where we want this to be a tool for our principals, and so it's a challenge, and it's a challenge for the assistant chiefs to not get into the evaluative mode and out of the coaching mode with the panorama results, and to lead them on a journey as they talked about. But yeah, we definitely saw that trend.
kind of just like that canary in the coal mine of like, if you are seeing some red flags, then are we have opportunities to changes then?
Ms. Hassan?
So my question is, did everyone respond to the survey? Like you sent out, I'm assuming you sent out these surveys to all employees. Did everyone respond? What was the response rate?
I believe we had a response rate of 86%. I did move past that
It was
quickly.
it was on every
I thought it was-
slide.
It's on there.
86 or 89?
You might go back and.
Yeah, we
Every
did.
slide, huh? So I really missed it then. Is that what you're saying?
Wasn't quite on every slide.
It's not every slide. Page 23.
The first.
That's amazing.
So, well,
Almost.
Okay, so you think it was 86%?
Yes.
I believe our overall was 86%.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so it's up
86%.
2%.
We are up 2%.
Okay, and then these, I guess for a lack of a better term, kind of expanded questions, you know, how you have
The open response?
no, where you, have a question and then, you know, you might just see 56%, but then if you look at the
The
responses.
neutral.
Oh, sure, where
Yeah.
you're seeing all
Yeah,
the,
that.
mhm.
So, whenever this was sent out to employees, were they able to see that, or did they just see the 56%, you know, that way?
Yes, they would have been able to see this.
They would have been able to like drill down and see?
If, with a little bit of clicking, yes,
Okay.
everyone had access to see it.
Okay, that's my question.
Mhm.
they would have had to dug into it
Yeah.
to do that,
Yeah.
and most probably didn't.
Okay,
They'd have to know what they were looking for.
gotcha. Okay. And when do y'all do this survey?
It opened on January 22nd and it closed on February 1st of last year, and I believe we're going to keep the timeline in the same place this year.
Thank you.
Ms. Crosby?
I'd like a copy of all of the open-end responses.
Certainly.
That's my-
And
when I come back around, I'll ask.
I'm just going to put my email up on the last slide so y'all can see it. Feel free to email me
I
for.
did see that.
Oh, excellent.
That
I
was
will
why
send
it was
you.
there.
That's why it's there. You can email me and I'll send you the responses. And I also put up scholarly articles and information on that. You're welcome to ask me for that. I have several of those at my fingertips, but probably the results are more interesting.
Ms. Hassett?
First of all, I want to say thank you to all staff. The evolution of the use of the data is transformational than it was several years ago. So I really, really appreciate that. And my question really is, so the district, so the campuses have to include an I statement, which I love, because then it focuses back on that. That's one of those evolution pieces. Thank you. What does the district staff have to do in order to respond in the same manner?
That's a great question.
I'll jump in there real quick. We, if I understand what you're asking correctly, what we did in employee services over the course of, I think it was 3 meetings, we looked at the 3 areas and we picked out the question we did the best on and we looked at the question we did the worst on. The idea being, what are we doing well and what do we want to improve and what can we do to improve? And so we had small group discussion on that among the 26 or so people. And then we had a general debrief, right? In fact, Dr. Hadhanchi and Ms. Prince led that. It sounds almost like what Ms. Lewis was saying with the input. We used sticky note input and then a gallery walk to see what our colleagues had said. Interestingly, the last meeting, we had things concluded and we asked all the administrative folks to leave, and we had some bins set up for very transparent input. And so we got that feedback as well. And so over the course of those 3 meetings, I really feel like we had a good opportunity for discussion on, what do we need to keep doing and what areas do we need to improve in. So that's kind of how we use it.
How do you share that with the rest of the district staff? Because everybody can see it on the campus improvement plan if they so choose to go look at the campus improvement plan. How do you, if they're already mentioning the strengths and weaknesses that they see, how are you sharing it that y'all are working on things too? I like
Yeah.
what you said.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know that we did that, to be honest with you. We mostly, not mostly, we kept it internal to the department on how we, what we can do differently moving forward.
It might
Yeah.
be worthy of sharing to the district somehow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Ms. Hassett. I think, really the purpose is to have these questions, to have these discussions amongst ourselves, and as far as what can we do better in this area or that area. So, your question about how could we report it out as far as departments, I haven't really thought about that. I just want to make sure that we were discussing the data. How could we improve the data? But it's something we can think about.
And my question, and you kind of alluded to, but not really because he was just a new principal for that year, but how soon, with our turnover in principalship, how soon have we discussed that with these principals and tried, in doing that coaching? Yes, new principals, the new principals. Right, okay.
That's one of the first things that they did when we did the 100-day plan with them. As we looked at last year, especially these 18 new
Yes.
principals, looked at last year's panorama as far as deciding kind of where they were going to start and what issues they were going to address first on the campus. So a lot of them started some of that in service in August.
Okay.
I think to speak to that point too, so one of the new things we implemented this year in working with the chiefs to do it was that 100-day plan that they just mentioned. So every new principal, there was a specific entry plan that they talked through them with, and going through all the different sources of data was part of that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cox?
So this is kind of a lengthy question, but it's anonymous, correct? These are anonymous. No
Yes.
one knows that you're filling.
No one knows. They're anonymous.
Okay. So my question is, you kind of answered it a little bit, but I love that teachers are giving an opportunity of a voice and actually leave their responses. So I really wish there was like a mid-year report so we could see where we're moving the mark. So how does that work as you on the leadership teams working with our principals? How does this work? I'm looking at, obviously we do this data to see, what changes are we making, and I would love to find those 108 people so we could change their attitude to be a more positive attitude if we could pinpoint those 108 people. But how are we moving the mark? Because, we saw, okay, it was the same as last year. Well, that's not what we want. We want to move the mark, and all those negatives, move those up next year. So how is that a constant, either is it training through you guys? How is that a constant conversation that we're having? What does that look like?
Use the microphone.
So I think we're realistic enough to know that there are some people that are just never going to be happy, and that no matter what the school does, they're always going to take the negative side. So I think there is a percentage that we kind of know that just from, you can see that on some of on the open responses and some other things that they're unhappy with. But I think it goes back to Dr. Rogers' philosophy on pressure and support. We have some really great principals, but they put so much pressure on that even though it's all good intentions and really great, there could be too much pressure, and if you don't follow it up with support, and then of course there's teachers or principals that are really good at support and maybe don't put enough pressure. So it's our job to monitor that every time we're there, every time we're looking at data, every time we're having discussions in PLCs to find out where that perfect balance is as far as their managerial style, their leadership style, their instructional leadership style, on just a good balance of providing a great student experience for the students, holding the teachers accountable, but not overdoing it, I think.
And how often is that? I mean, is that monthly, or how often is
We see everybody every 2 weeks, so at least every 2 weeks we're walking each building. So some are even more frequent than that.
I think if I could chime in on that, every data point helps to build a story. And so Edugence is a new data point to help us build the story in real time. Panorama is a data point. It's a single moment in time, but it's a data point that helps us build a story. And I think, And when you see principals go through the TPES process where they get to take ownership over their own goals related to student performance, related to their own professional development, it all helps to tell a story, and where the assistant chiefs are able to come in their support of those principals and also that balance of pressure and support. It's having another tool to help tell that story. I think that's where the power in Panorama comes as much as anything. It's the tool that we have that is a direct voice of those that our principals supervise.
I think too, depending on whether it's in their campus improvement plan, whether it's a personal growth goal for themselves or a campus goal within their TPES evaluation too, there's those evidence of progress and monitoring that they're doing themselves, whether it's a staff survey just internally. It's not going to be the same questions, but are we accomplishing as a campus what we had hoped to do based on the data we received? It could be exit tickets from a faculty meeting just of how are we doing, kind of similar to what Andy was referencing a while ago with getting feedback from staff. So those data pieces that we're just ongoing collecting to check in and having those conversations when we meet with principals. So it looks different because they all, and even with like parent surveys, we have some campuses. Lisa Langwin was a great example of, she did parent surveys on the iPad when parents were coming in to check their students out. I talked to Barry Dyster about that today as a great way to collect, because she's really working on the whole culture and community of at Lakeview, and so that's a way that she's going to work to get parent feedback consistently.
One of the things that we had the opportunity as a leadership team, and we've talked about this, we got the chance to go to Southwest Airlines, and we got to hear from them about their employee engagement feedback. And it's one of the hardest things I think that companies struggle with, to what's that right balance of measurement, of feedback. We all know of Southwest Airlines being known for recognition, and yet that's the area they score the lowest in for their employees, and their system would blow us all away on how they all can recognize one another. And so I think when we think about how much do you monitor, you think about the amount of different things going on in education right now, which is one of the reasons why Dr. Hart pulled that research about measuring. Is it how people feel? Is it better to measure that right when school starts? Is it better to measure that when they come back from a break? Do you measure it in October? How do you get a good read on that? So and then you think about standardized testing, and I hate to insert that in here, but I have to, because that plays a role into how educators feel about the work that they do. And so all of those things play a part in how someone might answer the survey and whether the needle moves very much or not.
And the reason I ask that is because, perception is reality. And if people feel that, okay, I answered these questions, but nothing's ever going to change, that's kind of perception of a lot of these surveys. My work does it. But hearing what you just said about the principal doing the QR code, it's a reality. Then it's like, oh, they are listening to me and trying to make a difference. So I was looking for things like that we're trying to do on our campus. So it's more of a reality to our teachers, showing that, yeah, we really do care, and we are trying to make an impact from the leadership team down to what your concerns are. So.
Yeah, and I think, Ms. Cox, what I can promise you is they're not all doing the QR code, but they are all having discussions with their staff every year about these, more than one time. And, part of this survey is staff has to own it too. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, because some of them don't want to own it. And so, it's a conjunction as far as all that. So, some of the scores that you're seeing is not them rating leadership, they're rating their colleagues or they're rating their students. So they've got to own this too, which is why I think the discussion is important for them to have. So,
thank you.
It was eye-opening, as Dr. Rapp said, when we visited Southwest Airlines, and to hear them, they have an amazing program, how they recognize their staff and all these different programs in place, and that is their lowest scoring thing on every employee survey is satisfaction.
Timish?
I know that some of our questions were different, so we couldn't get national scores, but just, I'm curious, is there any way to break the ones that are consistent down and how we compare to Texas? Because a lot of things will be similar in our area, and I'm wondering how we compare to like-minded or similar districts.
I asked that question. They won't give us Texas, but what they can do within the platform is they can show us how do we score within schools that are urban or suburban. So we can kind of break it down that way, and schools who are low percentage of free and reduced lunch or high percentage of free and reduced lunch, and so we can narrow it a little bit, but it's still on that national scale. I would like to see Texas. I asked for that
Why-
specifically.
What was the reason that they wouldn't give us Texas,
Proprietary data.
even if they removed? They just must not have enough in Texas to.
That would be my guess. That would be my guess.
Well, can you just keep it on your list to keep asking them?
I will certainly keep asking them. I'm delighted to.
Love that. Ms. Crosnick?
I'm curious if we have ever, now that we've done this for 2 or 3 years, and we've also done our campus profile sheets for 2 or 3 years, if we've ever looked at that data side by side. I realize that our parent survey is not as scientific, is what I'll put it as the panorama. Because I'm really curious where, if you will, that delta lies of what the teachers see and what parents see, and where those opportunities lie. I just didn't know if we'd ever even thought of looking at it like that. I'm just here to make work.
I would say that as far as my campuses, the parent data tends to be higher consistently. 1 or 2 questions might be in line with what you see on the panorama. And again, it might be customer service. And so that's definitely something as a district that we are working on. And so, but as far as support, safety, those seem to be pretty consistent in the high 80s to 90s. But there's a little bit more of a discrepancy in that area for mine.
A choice we made in the design of the campus profile was not to have a neutral response.
Right.
And to require parents pick a path, and that's different than the panorama design, which I think would lead to some different answers if the parent survey had a neutral.
And I don't really, that's something I wish we could change about Panorama. I don't like the neutral response, because I would have probably written that in myself on a few of them. But it is their survey. So.
Ms. Hassett?
Ms. Lewis, you said gallery walks. What's a gallery walk?
That's where different groups work together and make charts of things that they highlighted from their work in small groups, and then all of the groups go around and look at it to look at consistencies. They may make notes on the chart as feedback or suggestions, but it's just a good way to see the thinking from all the groups, just to kind of walk around.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, this round, why don't we go ahead and conclude with the rest of your questions if you have more?
Mine are answered.
Ms. Cox, no?
Thank you.
Ms. Timish?
If we could go to page like 25, and I can tell you, like, I'm not a statistician, and some of this, I don't know all the inner workings of it, but I just want to, having done enough surveys, and I think our teachers
Example 1 of 2.
Thank you.
Question 1, favorable rating 1.
That one's fine. The one where it was 30% go back, there, that stop. Or go to where it was 30, somewhat positive 30%. Forward. I don't know if you're going.
Because on mine, it says page 25. It says example.
It's about
Okay,
slide 8.
keep
Courtney.
going.
Slide
Keep backing
8.
up. Yeah, keep backing up.
Whoa.
Sorry. There you go.
It was one
Step back
right
and
there.
forward. There you go. So, having done enough surveys, and I think our teachers do enough surveys, I think regardless of it being quite positive, somewhat, they know that middle is a neutral response, I would feel like. So I guess, not really my question, but my comment would be, I would really like for us to be cautiously hesitant about saying that 30%, like 30% is good. Because I just feel like when you take this, that in my mind is really not, mean, that's a neutral response. So I don't want to say, oh, well, if we add those top 3, that's 90%. I'm not comfortable with doing that, because I think when our teachers take these surveys, they know that middle answer is just neutral. And so I just want to make sure we're being authentic when we're looking at this. And I just really, it concerns me when we have, like, especially the one when it rates your students. When we're, I appreciate them, but our colleagues, 43%, I mean, it just seems low to me. And so I think that just as we really want to get the most out of this, and I love this. I appreciate us doing it. I appreciate us staying consistent. My caution, and I know I'm repeating myself, I just really do not want to be over optimistic with this. And I think that teachers know that middle is neutral. And I think on any survey, you don't want neutral.
Use it as authentically as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get your point. I don't agree with, I think somewhat positive is actually pretty good. I don't think.
I think the wording.
I don't think teachers see that somewhat positive as a neutral. Yeah.
I guess maybe I'm different because I've just done enough surveys. Yeah. I would think somewhat positive is the wording's positive, but if you've done any survey, you want to do the top or the bottom to swing it.
Okay.
So maybe you're right. Maybe the teachers are different, but that's.
But it is what it is. It's the data we have.
And I understand that.
And our point is, we want to improve the data.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying. I want us to be, where can we make a positive difference?
Absolutely.
I would concur with Ms. Timish and just the assumption that it's always good just because it's neutral. You can always also push it down on the bottom. And so, I agree that I like our campus profiles where we don't give a neutral option. I just have a boy, Ms. Lewis, you're going to get it on all of the things you said. What is campus voice? Because you said that was one of the areas, and so I don't know.
Exactly like what Andy was talking about with them
The teachers having an input.
Teachers input.
Okay.
Ms. Hassett? And so I had a couple of other questions. How do we pick the dates that we're giving and making sure that there is not some kind of survey fatigue?
Carefully and usually with a lot of
So
arguing amongst ourselves.
we pick those dates.
Yes, ma'am. We
Yes.
select the dates, and I distinctly recall a conversation at leadership team last year, probably September, October. Hey, when's the best time to do this thing? Because of the very instance you just mentioned, survey fatigue.
And does Panorama, do they ever see or ever share? Because I know a lot of surveys, you'll see a second year fatigue, and then it'll
You're reading our mail, Ms. Sells.
it's what I got my master's
Because at leadership
So,
team this
yeah.
year, we talked about maybe we should do this every other year. And so I think that conversation's probably maybe going to be ongoing. We're committed to this year, clearly. But it's probably a conversation we'll circle back to, I would guess.
And our thought process as far as why it was mid to late January is it's right after the holidays. You'd hope that they'd come back. It's after a major grading period. We know we wouldn't choose. And you've got to then try to stick to close to the same window to where it's apples to apples. So that's sort of our dilemma.
The other thing it gives us is the opportunity to go right into the campus improvement planning process, which you actually start in May with your campus plan for the next year. And so we give the survey, we get the results, we share the results with the principals. It's usually like late March, right after spring break. So they've got an opportunity then to work that data, present it to their staff, and use it in the campus improvement planning process. If we went much later, it would be really difficult and inauthentic to put it in a campus improvement plan.
Okay. And my other question was, and I just have to ask, I think I'd probably know the answer from Panorama, but there's no way to stepping stone these surveys to include the two that we dropped off, the two questions that we dropped off. Do you understand? So one year we ask a set of questions, and the next year, and we alternate those.
We have some
I think we
flexibility
could do
on
that.
that.
so that if we're not, I mean, I know that there's fatigue in taking it every year, but if they thought that there, if it's not the same, you're going to have a different fatigue. If it's new questions, and so it creates a new challenge for them because it's not something they've seen last year, but they saw it 2 years ago, and so I think you might see different responses. I also don't like a neutral. I'm not sure that somewhat positive sits in that neutral, but what I will say is I hope that they're looking at that threshold, and I understand why Panorama sets that threshold, but for the two categories above. But I also think that there's a lot of information in those bottom three that if you look at, and you look at them carefully, because if you move from a somewhat positive to a 30%, but last year that was 20 and below you was at a 10, you're making some improvement, whether that be from a perceived negative to a neutral. But I hope that we don't lose those that small information, because that might be that information that tells you we need to push a little bit more support here, or we need to put a little bit more pressure on these. Maybe we're doing a little bit, but maybe we're not doing it the right way. Maybe we're not addressing it to that way, to a correct way. So those are my...
To the fatigue, how long does it take someone to do this survey? Can I start it and stop it and come back, or do I have to do it all in one sitting?
You don't have to do it all in.
Mechanics.
You don't have to do it all in one sitting. I don't have the number off the top of my head. 2 years ago, it was 12 minutes. When we took this out, I want to say it came down to 7 minutes.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, roles and responsibilities was taking people the longest in the non-instructional, and teaching efficacy was taking us the longest in the instructional staff. So those were two.
Is that one of the reasons that you pulled them?
It was part of it. There was a lot that went into it, but we have all those. Yeah, I've had that discussion with myself many times, looking at a blank wall. But yeah, that we did take the time down significantly, which had been a concern the year before. So, and they can start and stop. I believe if they exit out of it, when they come back to, I believe if they exit out of it, it just doesn't save. And so when they come back to it, it's they can go into it again. But once they've submitted, because it is related to that person, like each person gets an individual link. So once I've submitted, when I go in, it says, oh, you've already submitted your survey. But if I don't finish it and I close out, it lets me start over again, if that makes sense.
My other...
One more question.
Go ahead.
Okay, for the percentages, increased or decreased, how is that calculated? Is the middle included in that?
It's not.
So
It's just the
only
percent favorable.
The favorable increased, or the,
Yep.
so the middle, what happens to the middle? If the
Nothing.
middle
They
is-
don't consider it at all. They're
They don't
only
move,
looking at
so it's not
percentage
considered.
that was selected in those top two answer choices.
So like if your middle move, let's just say your middle
Middle
moved up
moved
4%,
anyway.
it's
It's
not
increased.
counted in
But it
the
is,
data.
because it's increased or decreased.
You would only know that if you looked at it.
Because you
Yeah.
could, yeah, okay, I got it. I just want to make sure that middle isn't included.
Right.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
I had another thing, but I can't remember it.
Was it as brilliant as mine?
It was just as brilliant as yours, and I
It's not
just
my
can't
fault.
even remember it. So, so we'll continue to move on, but I could probably,
You can email
I'm
me.
going to go to sleep thinking about this tonight. I'll just tell you that right now.
Just shoot
Yeah,
her an email.
we'll email you. Yes, thank you so much.
She'll answer it tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
Thank y'all very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great information. Thank you all. Moving on to technology report with Mr. Colbeck.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. I'm going to have Chris Langford come up. Both topics are overseen by his division. This is a topic that I introduced a few meetings back. This is regarding campus sound system refresh. And just to reiterate some of the things I touched on, this is really it's for the technology that's used for the audio systems in the gyms, multi-purpose areas, and cafeterias. I just want to point out that this is not outdoor stadiums. It's not our auditorium. That's really a separate area. And also, I want to point out that this is not our paging system. We are working on another project that you're going to see in the near future regarding updating the paging head end in each campus. So I just want to point out that this is different. This is just basically the audio for events that are occurring in those spaces. But essentially, we in the planning process of the 2017 bond, we recognize we need to address some of that aging equipment. And I shared with the board the last time we discussed this topic, the amount that was budgeted in the 2017 bond was $1.5 million. So certainly we can't go through and replace every sound system in all of our campuses for that amount of money. So what we've done is we ended up working with purchasing to develop what I would call kind of an a la carte approach to what may be needed at an elementary, middle, and high school. So that procurement process is really designed to give us the flexibility to choose the products that we need based upon what's needed. For example, you could go into a high school gym and you might have a bunch of blown out speakers and a bad sound processor, but a really good amp. Our intent is to, if quality equipment is already in there, we're not looking to replace it. We're going to try to extend those dollars to the best that we can, but put a system in that will serve that campus well over time. And then also I want to point out that as the district's going through the 20-year refresh process, none of the locations in the 20-year refresh would be included in this as well. Also, it's not in the background, but I do want to point out we are now working with new construction to have a specification for all of those spots. Part of our problem at this point is when the buildings were built, there weren't standards around this stuff. So we have a real mix and match of hardware across the board, and some of the parts are even difficult to get. So anyway, this is something that we're planning on bringing forward to the board next week. That information, as far as the procurement information, is already in board book. But with that, if you have any questions, myself or Mr. Langford can help answer them.
Okay, Ms. Timish?
No, thank you.
Ms. Lasan?
My question, so when I just happened to go around doing these LEF grants, one of the grants was for a sound system at a school. It was the choir teacher. And now it might have been a portable sound system, but I guess, like, how are these campuses going to say, okay, well, I need this. Is it just, if it's busted, you're going to?
Well, what we've gone through, and we've inventoried everything.
Okay.
We've gone through and inventoried everything. So if you think about it, maybe in likes of a facility assessment, saying what's the age of this and when, we're starting there. Unless we know there's a spot that, we get requests where we know we have some problem areas in the district, those we're going to obviously try to get at, especially if they're serving a lot of people. But where we're really starting is the age of the equipment that's in there. And then having conversations with the campus. How's this working for you? And I think from our department, just across the board, tickets over the years, we're getting a pretty good handle of where some of this problem equipment is. But it would really go off of the age of the equipment and where we know we have problems.
So it's kind of standardizing, like everyone should have a sound system in their gym cafeteria.
Correct.
And their elementary.
Yep.
So, okay. And so, Dr. Rogers, you think that one that I was talking about was a portable?
Portable,
I'm sure.
And that's just sort of extra,
That's
a
extra.
portable sound system? Okay.
Ms. Presley?
So, is this something that was not addressed in previous refreshes?
There's a good chance it may not have been prior to getting this last bond program started. Some of the gear, I'm thinking specifically like at the Colony High School in the gym. That's probably original equipment. And some of these systems actually, if it's really good stuff, it can last 20, 30 years. But at the same point, one of the things, technology's gotten better too, right? So when you put these systems in, they don't have the digital processors to keep people from overturning up the amp and blowing out speakers. So those kind of things happen over time. But in I think leading up to, I'll just speak from the time that I got here, which was in 2015, some of these systems weren't even really identified as far as where the technology, where the facility, they had to land somewhere. So we went through and we inventoried all of them.
So I guess my question is I want to know if something that we refreshed 5 years ago, for example, is a campus that we're going to be touching with this because it wasn't included. Does that make sense? I think looking at something and seeing a campus come and go, we just did a refresh on that campus 4 or 5 years ago. That's my question.
Yeah, Ms. Prosnick, we'll follow up with Randy and Jason. I would guess that you're right, that it was not part of refreshes. I mean, if you think, and I mean, you as a board have come a long ways in putting in, adopting ed specs and facilities assessments that were never in place before this board took those actions. So, you know, we did refreshes 5 years ago and didn't replace the furniture in classrooms. So I would venture to guess that it was not, but we'll find out for sure.
And I'm assuming we now have a standard?
For this equipment?
Yes.
Yeah, the standard's actually in the
It's
in the RFP. Yeah.
Haven't gotten that far yet.
Ms. Hassett?
Did you say that this was in the facilities assessment? So there is.
No, it's outside of that. It's in our technology list of items that we're identifying based upon the inventory and how old they are. But it's very similar in that, okay, this campus, this system, here's how old it is, here's what the gear is. So it would look kind of similar to the facility assessment.
And it's in a document that has other technology.
This one is probably just the audio systems, I'm thinking, is what we have.
I'm just wondering, how can we make sure all of those are?
We can work that into the facilities assessment. That's not a problem. I think it's new. I mean, they had to create it for the RFP, so but we'll work it into that document.
Just to make sure that you don't have it, you said it was or was not included in the 20-year refreshes?
It was. I'm sorry.
Was.
I thought you said the bond program.
Sorry.
The campuses that are included in the 20-year refresh list for the 2017 bond program, those are going to be having the technology refreshed based upon the standards that we have now for our ed tech spec. These would be spots that haven't been touched, for some time. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Cox?
So I'm curious, you said the gyms, does this include our multi-purpose arenas?
When you say multi-purpose arenas,
Or our arenas that we have at the campuses, facilities?
the gyms, the indoor gym facilities would be included, but also we have multi-purpose rooms. For example,
We're talking about the arenas.
Arenas.
Correct. The gyms, the arenas, those would be included. Yes.
Okay, so are you testing that? Because I'll be real honest, the sound is terrible. If you're on the first level, you can hear great, but if you're up in the stands, you have no clue what they're talking about.
Each of those have to be looked at and decide what's good and what's bad and what's causing it.
Okay.
And does it require a full system replacement? Does it require, a new amp or head end unit to make it work? We're going to be looking at it for each campus. So if it needs, for example, if we need a new amp and it's at, the Marcus High School gym, we know exactly which amp we would need based upon the spec that we have in the RFP.
I know this is kind of in the weeds, I'm sorry, but I'm curious how you're going to test that when if just you're sitting in the room and you're sitting in the room, you can hear just fine. It needs to be like a full
It's going to have to be when it's being used.
Okay.
Yeah. And some of it might actually just be that it needs to be optimized.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff actually does it's new enough that it has some intelligence built into it where it can be reprogrammed and dialed in. So obviously if we can do that, we would do that.
Ms. Timmons? And I don't have any questions either. So thank you for that. Moving on.
All right.
You talked a lot, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. All right. Next topic is wide area.
Real quick, Brian. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just want to make sure. So the arenas that you're talking about, if you're talking about like the arena that's being built right now out at Hebron High School, that type of arena is not included in the campus sound. If you're talking about like the main gym at a high school, that would be included.
I'm
in
not
this.
talking
About
about the
the
arenas.
big arenas, no, that is not included in this RFP that we're doing right now.
But
Okay, when will that be included? When will we do that?
I want to clarify what you're asking. Are you talking about for the facilities we're currently building, or that we're going to be building?
No, I was just using that as an example.
Okay.
I'm talking about our arenas, Claremont High School Arena, Marcus High School Arena.
The activity centers.
Yes.
The MAC, right? MAC, yeah.
No.
No, that's not.
The performing arts areas, auditoriums, those spaces would not be included.
When will those be looked at?
That will have to, and some of those have been updated with, through facilities. So if you think of like the Colony Auditorium, those have been updated.
We'll study it.
LHS, and those items would be in the facility document. These other audio video systems are not.
Okay, because the sound is not good.
Pardon?
The sound
Thanks,
is not
Chris.
good. Yes,
Okay.
thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Moving on.
All right, thank you. Next topic is wide area network fiber project. This is, again, a topic that I brought up with the board, and this comes back to, currently our wide area network, everything in the district comes back to this site. And it's essentially, one connection coming in, with the exception, especially when you get to the east side, we have sections of our network that multiple campuses are running through the same path. So if that path gets cut, typically backhoe related, I think we have had a squirrel problem in the past too, but where they chewed through some sections of fiber. But point being, if the fiber gets cut, there's several campuses impacted. So as we were planning the 2017 bond program, we knew we needed to start building out a fiber ring design that would basically give us multiple paths should that fiber get cut. So what we were looking to do is essentially start off building out a ring around our high schools, recognizing our highest density of population being there, very heavy technology users. So we were working specifically with Region 11, looking at their fiber project that they were doing for Fiber 11. It's called Fiber 11, which is interconnecting campus districts. But there were also opportunities within that same procurement to allow districts to build out wide area network connections within the district. And as we started looking into that opportunity, what we realized is that was a very good opportunity, in that is a weighted average for E-rate for all the schools in the consortium. So what that actually allows us to do is benefit from a much higher free reduced lunch rate, which decreases the actual out-of-pocket cost should the district want to do that on our own. In addition, in the 85th biennium, there was a $25 million match grant that the state of Texas put in. And that particular project, or Region 11, applied for grant dollars on it. So the potential here to actually get match dollars to do part of this build-out would be included in this. And just to clarify, that was not included in this biennium. So this is kind of a one-time opportunity if we could reap the benefit of it. So essentially what we ended up doing is looking at what would it look like to interconnect our high schools. And certainly we have more needs than just our high schools. So as we started looking at the route that would take, a lot of those routes were very close to other middle schools. So as you look through the list, this is not just high schools. There's middle schools that are on this list as well. And essentially what this would do is it would give us the opportunity to have a ring design for those 13 campuses, and we would see this as a multi-phase project, really. There was $3 million budgeted to start building out a ring design, so obviously we're going to be able to take that much further. So our hope is that we could do more in future years. It's just that when we were initially talking with Region 11 in their E-rate funding application, we needed to give them some preliminary addresses, and the 13 is what made sense. So there might be opportunities for future years. The state match monies wouldn't be there, but the weighted E-rate reduction would be there if we wanted to build that out further. But to do this in the first phase, essentially that would get it would have a big impact on all of our high schools as well as the middle schools that are listed there. It would give us the opportunity to have that ring network for I'm sorry, it would give us the opportunity to have that up to 16 years. So it's a 10-year agreement with up to 6 additional years thereafter. So it would be a long-term deal. Region 11 is the organization that's actually the billing organization, but Zayo Networks is the network that was awarded through that competitive process through Region 11. And just to give the board some reassurance, that is a very large company. They're a Tier 1 provider. They have, what are they at, 130,000 miles of fiber in the U.S. and in Europe. They have, I jotted down some notes. They're doing right around $2.8 billion in revenue. They're just a massive company. So their presence in the Metroplex is very large as well, and as well as interconnecting really sections across the entire United States. So I feel really comfortable with them providing service. So with that, our plan is to bring a recommendation item to the board next week. Just to clarify, too, to hit this E-rate window through Region 11, the board would need to take action on this at next week's board meeting. So with that, if anybody has any questions, Chris and I can do our best to answer them.
Okay. Ms. Lasan?
You know, I'm a map person. I sort of wish, I'm sure you have a map of this or what it's going to look like somewhere. I wish I could see that at some point, but
we'll get you.
Kind of hard to see.
We can send it to you. We have a couple pictures of maps that it's kind of hard to read because it's so dense.
Yeah.
But we have one that shows you a larger route. And when you see it, what I would kind of challenge you to do is just mentally think, if the fiber was cut, if the red line was cut here, how could it go a different route? And I think you'll see that if you can see a visual of that.
Okay. Do you want me to, I think I could have more questions, but I'll wait.
Okay. Ms. Prosnick?
So is 10 years the maximum length for the subscription or the minimum?
The minimum. It would give us the ability to have six.
So that's the minimum that we could do?
6 renewals. Yep, 6 one-year renewals.
So could we do it? Would there be any benefit to doing a longer subscription? Because I mean, it's not going anywhere, right?
No, but if the monthly recurring costs don't change over the course of so if we keep it for 1 year or 16 years, our monthly recurring costs are exactly the same. So really the reason we want to extend the term is because the initial investment is where all the cost is. And so if we put in all the money to have the fiber put in and then we only keep it for 5 years, then we're not maximizing those dollars over keeping that subscription for 16 years. And the monthly recurring cost compared to that upfront is very, very small.
I'm just seeing
Chris,
10 years in here. You're saying 16 and I'm seeing 10.
Well, 10 is the initial term, and then we have
Okay.
6 one-year renewals. So the maximum this initial agreement would be for 16 years.
And
Yes.
Region 11 is the one that negotiated the contract that we're getting in on. and
Correct.
I mean, I assume that's the maximum that they negotiated.
Yes.
So-
Yeah, the max E-rate would allow them to do was a 10-year term up front and then 10 one-year renewals, but we're already 4 years into their agreement with Zayo, which is why it's 10 and then 6.
And then, Mr. Ball, just make sure that I understand things correctly. The subscription fees cannot be used, bond money cannot be used on subscription fees.
We've actually run this by our bond counsel, and if you look on page 7 of the PDF file that's in board book, it's probably numbered differently in board book, but it's the last page of the actual agreement. There are 4 items there that we've added to that contract based on the advice of our bond counsel, which does, we believe in good faith, this is an appropriate use of bond funds. Those items are, it has a public purpose, it's a capital expenditure, the estimated useful life of the fiber or our access to it is at least as long as the repayment period for the bonds, and that it is just an appropriate, that the board would say it's an appropriate use of bond funds. And if we meet those 4 things, our bond counsel has told us we could finance this with bond money. And that's why those, right above the signature line there, it says Lewisville ISD : and then there's those 4 items I just recited. And that is, according to our bond counsel, sufficient to make this appropriate for use with bond funds. We also believe it's prudent financially because if the board will recall, all of our the bond funds that are attributable to technology, we're repaying that principal over a 5-year period, and this is a 10-year contract. So we'll actually have access to this fiber for at least 5 years after the bonds are totally repaid. And I think that's part of the public purpose statement is that the board would declare that it makes sense. It's a public purpose to purchase 10 years of access to fiber, potentially 16, with a bond financing source that's totally repaid in 5 years.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here. What if it is deemed that it is, what if the Attorney General, I don't know who would come back and say that we can't use bond funds. But I mean, we can say, great, but what if the state comes back and says no for the subscription portion? What
I think
happens
that
then?
the two issues that we have to contend with in a bond, in a decision about whether an expenditure is an appropriate expenditure for bonds, there's really two sources there. One is the Internal Revenue Service, because we're dealing with tax-exempt bonds, and so we have to meet the conditions of federal law in order to have the interest on those bonds exempt from federal income tax to the bondholders. And so we've met that requirement. And the other requirements really are state law issues. I think the Attorney General's involvement, I'm into Mr. Crownover's territory here a little bit, but I think the Attorney General weighs in on the front end of the bonds. And so it really becomes just a state law compliance issue, just like any other state law that we have to comply with. I don't think there's anyone circling the block trying to determine are we in compliance with our bond covenants, but it's a requirement that we have as the fiduciary responsibility that we have as custodians of those agreements. And that's why we took the measure to run this by our bond counsel to make sure that they're certainly not going out on a limb advising us. That they'd be real quick to say, no, you can't do this. But they were very clear that if we do these 4 things, that they think we're fine.
It's good to see subscriptions being able to pay with bond funds. I will say that.
Pass it.
I'm trying to remember a committee meeting we had a long time ago when we were talking about this way back in the beginning. Is this where you said that other municipalities and things they also could tie in to this ring, and then we could charge them back?
Yeah, that would be unlikely because it's owned by Zayo as a they're selling basically a service to this fiber, to customers of Region 11.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
That's the only question.
I think you're
And
thinking about the one up in the colony. Wasn't there
We
one?
did do that in the colony, yes.
And the initial discussion about this was us building and owning the fiber as opposed to leasing it through Zayo. And since we're leasing it, that just goes away. But the cost to lease versus to build and own, and then the recurring cost is so much lower because if it gets hit by a backhoe, it's all Zayo's issue instead of us having to pay $500,000 to get it fixed. So
That's a better use of money.
Okay, Ms. Cox?
So now that the subscription fees or the maintenance fees can come out of the bond funds, are we paying them monthly or will we be paying a one lump sum for the year?
I don't know that we've had that discussion. At least if we have, I haven't been involved in it. But I think what we have to remember is the vast majority of the cost that we're talking about here is for that initial construction. And if you look in that contract, it's, I was just scanning over it as Brian was speaking. It's $50,000 per circuit. On the first 84 circuits, $100,000 per circuit. After that, it's $10,000 per mile, and then the monthly maintenance is $200 per circuit. So it just gives you an order of magnitude of the percentage of the total that we're talking about that's attributable to those monthly fees. I think that's why we wanted to run it by our bond counsel to make sure that they were comfortable with this, and they've given us these 4 items. Now, what we're not talking about is just randomly going out now and saying, okay, it's okay to do subscriptions with bond funds. The attorneys have weighed in on this particular contract and this particular deal, and so we're not going to go out and start paying for our National Geographic subscription in the libraries with bond funds, and so it is unique to this contract.
I just didn't know if there would be an opportunity to have a better deal because we were paying them up front. Sometimes you can get better subscriptions if you pay the 1 lump fee at once as opposed to monthly.
I think we'll look at that. I think the benefit of the better deal has to be weighed out against, prepaying for things we haven't received yet. So I think all of those points we'll take a look at when the time comes to.
We have verified with our E-rate consultant that from an E-rate perspective, it's possible to prepay for the initial 10-year term if we decide to do that.
Okay, Ms. Timms?
Okay, so if I'm looking on the last page and it says the total's $1,037,000, and you were saying we received about a 20 to 30% better price discount going with this. So that means on that $1 million, we could have added 20 to 30% on top of that. I like that. I just wish we had it like in print to say that, look at, I just appreciate how hard and diligent that our staff works to get these kind of deals. And I know it just doesn't come along that you guys are actively looking for that. So I really appreciate that savings.
And actually, I think that's a great point, Ms. Timmish. It's really two things that make this. We're stretching the dollars of our bond program. One is a sort of one-time matching state money that's available on this deal, and the other is taking advantage of the greater participation percentage, if you will, of the E-rate, because we've hitched our wagon, if you will, to a bunch of other districts in Region 11 that when you aggregate them all together, they have a higher percentage of free and reduced lunches than we do, and therefore we get a higher E-rate discount. And so you combine that with the state matching money, and this could be well in excess of twice what we're actually spending on it.
So what would that number be?
I don't know that I've run that number, but
I just love to say that we saved.
I think you could double the number and be
so we
safe
saved $1 million.
with that.
Yeah,
All right. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, and my question is, and I'm going to use that neutral word, I somewhat understand why the 13 were chosen, but I want to make sure that we are not losing. Are there going to be any outlying schools that are at risk of, and I haven't seen that map, so that map is probably key.
That's better than what we have now, right?
I just want to make sure that
There will, with that number, there are going to be schools that are not on the ring. And if they have a fiber cut and they don't have a different route to get out, they would be down until we get the whole district on a ring design.
But this is just phase 1.
Correct. We see this as a multi-phase approach. And to answer your question on trying to clear up how they were selected, when we laid out the routes of where the fiber would be going to interconnect the high schools, the lateral connections, some of them were very, very close to pick up a middle school on the same, you're just down this fiber's going right by there. If we just ran up the road, we could bring them on the ring. So that was really our logic in trying to pick those campuses.
Okay. And what happens in year 16? We walk away, or maybe technology is different at that point, who knows?
Yeah, it's possible that technology would be different. We wouldn't need this anymore, but Zayo's already made the investment at this point, so it's very possible that we would be able to negotiate our own contract with them if the Fiber 11 contract goes away, and it's also possible that at the end of this term that Region 11 is going to renew their contract with Zayo or do a new RFP, and if Zayo wins that, I mean, there's multiple options, but it's very possible that we would be able to continue using this fiber either through the Fiber 11 or through our own agreement with Zayo that we would make at the end of the term. So.
Okay, that was all of my questions. Does anybody have any additional?
On the second time or looping more in, I know you've done this based on geography, and that's always going to be the most cost-effective way to do it. Totally agree, and think we should continue that. But we're definitely a little bit more heavy on some of our feeder patterns. Can we make sure that we're looking at that the next go around?
Yeah, we can look at that. And I would think my thinking on the next round too is really look at where your highest enrollments are. And if you think about, middle schools that maybe aren't on there, or very, very large elementary schools, I think you want to reach the biggest impact for having redundant or resiliency.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Colbeck.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
And Chris. Thank you. And moving on, we're up to Dr. Coe.
Okay, the next item I'm going to have Mr. Garrett come up here and help with this. And I've got wasn't sure if you were going to make it. Matt was helping honor one of our SROs at the Colony, so he was a late arriver tonight. It has been a year since we convened the Safety Task Force, which seems like yesterday and like much more than a year ago at the same time. I knew that because I remember we got in trouble because we scheduled a meeting on a Cowboys game night on a Thursday, and it's Cowboy season again. So we really wanted just to update you on where we are with some things safety and security related. We thought one of the best forums to do that was to just go through some of those topics that we brought forward to you after the task force had its meetings. And Mr. Garrett's going to lead you through a little presentation here.
Yep. All right, just as a reminder, the task force met last fall. 10 items were brought forward from the task force to leadership for consideration, and we are greatly appreciative of your support as we work to implement these items. Let's see. This is a public overview. I had to make sure what I put in here we're good with, understanding that there's probably some details that we didn't want to share, and hope you understand that. Our first one, and the score on the top right, is at a 5. This was our highest scoring item from the task force, was mental health training for staff. All campus staff have received their initial training as part of the August professional development. This was face-to-face training. Currently, they will be developing online modules for follow-ups throughout this year. And this spring, they will be taking a moment to stop, look at the progress, look at what steps going forward, and roll with that. One interesting thing, this was done well before the legislature met this last spring. One of the items that came out of that legislation, I should say, is the trauma-informed classroom. So they're going to lump that into this training as well for meeting that requirement. ID badges for all students was a 3.9. That was our second highest scoring. This year, all high schools and middle schools have printed photo ID badges. This year is also going to be a pilot program. We currently have 8 elementaries using photo IDs, but they're also printing paper, more like general IDs, grade, school, and name, I believe are the 3 things on there, just so that the elementary schools could to start trying different things out with that. We really want to experiment with them to see what works in an elementary school. The challenges are there. It's not like a secondary. Well, it's hard enough for a secondary to keep track of their badge, but elementary, students, it's a little bit more difficult. So we're going to continue work to look at that. A couple things that we are looking into. RFID, or radio frequency identification, is an interesting thing. There are challenges to everything, so that's just something that we're going to be reviewing. Location services, That kind of goes in with, are they on the bus? Did they get off the bus? We can also look at ways where it can tie in with library and lunch accounts. Third was enhanced internal behavior threat assessment tools. A big chunk of legislation coming out of it for schools this year covered this topic. Thankfully, LISD was ahead of the curve, especially coming from the task force. This was already being discussed. We went with a three-tiered review system that was modeled based on some local ISD usage as well as recommendations from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. We feel very comfortable that we took what's working and we changed a few things to make it ours, and we feel very comfortable with it. But it's also important to stress this is a living document. I could tell you already with SPED or special education inputs, we're making it better. After we do more and more threat reviews, I think that you're going to start getting a lot more feedback from campuses, and I've got a few things from our local law enforcement they want to tweak, and that's exactly what we want. This is a very complex topic, and I think that this is something that will evolve numerous times as we go out, especially since most of the state is behind us, and they're just now getting on board with the new legislation. So wanted to highlight too with the protocols, levels 1 and level 2, already in use in the district. We've had several of those that we've done, and it's also important, things that we've created such as supervision and support plans. That's something new that we're working on, but a lot of this stuff was already existing in LISD, and that's kudos to the focus on this topic. For the last, I believe, year we've had, or multiple years, we've had some form of threat review. Also tied with the threat assessment was overnight LISD security monitoring. That's been in place since April 2019. We are currently fully staffed. It is important to highlight we are bumping into a few of those challenges of keeping folks working at those hours. Some folks are coming in at 9, leaving at 2, or working 7P to 7A. It's interesting, and we'll continue to evolve that system, but it's been useful. We've had several issues where we've been able to pop up and call for a law enforcement as they witness something. Anytime we need something happen, even if it's at 2 a.m., instead of us coming in to do it, we're able to call and have work done. It's really nice to have eyes throughout the district, and it's working. So, active shooter, this is a very large project that's almost finished. We've got, I believe, a handful of schools left on this one, but basically law enforcement-led training. We call it CRAZE. It's a civilian response to active shooter events. This training is going on at all of our schools for all of our staff. Basically, it's a 35, 45-minute presentation with a lot of Q&A, and that's where we've seen a lot of benefit. Our staff have been able to ask questions with law enforcement, get a feel for situational questions, and have their first responders answering it. One of the things we'll be looking at is, of course, updating any materials and possibly including scenario-based training in the future. One of the things is we want to make sure this is kept up. We're going to have to make sure we find ways for new hires and folks that come in mid-year to get them trained up as well. But we do feel this is very valuable information. And one of our biggest stressors that we tell the staff is, listen, watch the news. You understand, we're not trying to scare you in what you're doing. This is information that you could use anywhere. I mean, commercial buildings, religious buildings, schools. I mean, we don't want them to just think this is focused solely on school situations. It's going to benefit them in any situation. And so far, while we have a few nerves and a few folks that are a little fearful, so far positive feedback is what we're hearing from the law enforcement instructors. Enhanced canine detection services, 3.71. This is something I'm really glad to see come. We have a new service provider this year based on the feedback from the task force. We have 2 dogs per visit. They're trained on very specific materials. The main goal, of course, is to reduce the false hits. That slows down the dogs, it slows down the administrators, it complicates things. All the handlers coming into our schools right now are either current law enforcement or former law enforcement, and these dogs are very eager to work, very energetic. We're doing a classroom in about a minute and a half, which is much faster than what the previous vendor was doing. And so far, we're hearing very favorable feedback from the campuses. As you can imagine, we're impacting learning environments less, and still achieving what we're set out to do, which is to make sure that our schools are safe as they can be. Classroom door security, 3.62. This is the one I want to say is significant in size and complexity. When we started looking at it, multiple options for multiple situations, different size doors, different size windows, and at a certain point we're going to have to probably bring in the professionals that can design a project this complicated, because I could tell you, you don't want me measuring anything with her. Ask Rachel. Ultimately, we do feel that the window treatment glazing is probably a better option than a hardware function. It does get into some complexities about training and making sure the pieces of equipment don't disappear or move, when really all we're doing is reinforcing the door and the window to keep entry from happening. So what we're going to do is report back on the next steps, but this will require a coordinated effort, new construction, architects, safety and security. Campus perimeter security curfew. This was, and these are the titles that the task force had. How they've evolved, during the 4 meetings that we had, of course, change. What came out of the task force was really just a clear expectation for our guests on usage of our playgrounds. Signs are in play, and I have a person who will model these.
Oh, wait, this is the Spanish one. I'll model in English first.
I want to say thank you to Amanda Brenham and her team. They helped design these, as well as some other signs we'll talk about soon. What you'll notice with that, there's depending on the way you're looking at it, there's lots of different lines in it. Highly reflective for nighttime use in our playgrounds. They are currently being installed. I think very clear basic expectations for our guests, especially with the sunrise to sunset rule for non-school days. One of the things that our overnight security monitors are doing and have done, especially on the weekends, summertime, how our basketball courts become very public. But when we started seeing very large groups staying very late at night, we were able to need to get them home and make sure they are safe and sound. So we're really glad for that. Again, thank you for your team helping with them. I think they turned out excellent. Campus delivery for students. This was a 3.45. Dr. Coburn, you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, we do, and we communicate a lot of that out over the summer. The change in the policy in the student handbook, it is in place. We got a lot of input from our campuses about exactly how we needed to word that in a way that worked. I'm actually really proud of the fact that we haven't had the implementation challenges that I think we had braced for. When you change something like this, you are moving very personal cheese for people. But it was communicated out well. It's being implemented very consistently. It is something that I see when you walk into a security vestibule on a campus. You don't have to stand there for long before you see somebody bringing a delivery, and you can see this in action. And we mentioned the high school specifically because we knew that was the place where the volume was the most significant. And so we do have, it is no doubt safer. We have a lot more controls in place about what is coming in and out of the building. And the more important one I know from Matt's perspective is that those doors are they're opening and closing behind people. So we don't have this situation where the DoorDash guy is holding the door open for the next 7 people that want to walk in and give a lunch to whoever. So it is working. I'm really pleased, but this one only works if the campuses make it work, and they're doing a really good job. Very pleased.
Last, armed security personnel. We're treating this year as a review year. We finally have our middle school SROs in place, and as you've seen, I'm really glad to start seeing the elementary schools putting pictures up of their SROs. In fact, I just got back from the colony where we represented or recognized Omar Montemayor as the SRO of the year for the state of Texas. I believe Officer Harney or Corporal Harney in Highland Village just got Denton County. Those are all folks in our schools. We're really blessed to have them. And as we've added more SROs, the amount of elementary schools that they're covering are greatly reduced. Typically, an SRO has 2 elementary schools that they stop in and visit. In the rare occurrences, they have 3. It's because their elementary school is on the same premise as our middle schools. So they're on site, and then we just add 2 more to those. We work very closely with our law enforcement partners on the ratios and locations, and we're really pleased with them. Like I said, all of our police departments are providing top-notch school resource officers, and we can't ask for anyone better. One of the newest things that we started seeing is DPS support. I believe the governor has issued a directive to DPS to start being closer to schools in general. We are seeing that in LISD. They're stopping in, familiarizing themselves with our layouts, and it's really great. They've added all of their floor plans into their computers, so they have all that for emergency planning purposes, and we are greatly appreciative of DPS as well as our local law enforcement. Like last bullet, of course, these are continued conversations. We'll always be working with our law enforcement partners to make sure that our kiddos are safe. It's their mission as much as mine. So, again, we thank them for their support. And just to finalize the presentation, just a couple current issues in safety and security. The security vestibule project, I think new construction is almost done with the punch list. That was a very large project, but I believe they've done a very good job of getting that done in such a short amount of time. Signage is about to be ordered and get those up. I know that the temporary signage is creative. I would hope that some of those are mascot colors. We will get the permanent signage up soon. The other thing, based on Senate Bill 11, Safety and Security Committee expansion, we're looking at expanding that based on the law. Of course, we have to juggle and make sure that we have to make sure it works. When you get something a large amount of folks are going to be on, we got to make sure it's either divided up in subcommittees or have an executive committee, and we'll be working to make sure we meet this semester as required by law and get that going. Let me go back to real quick security vestibules. First, I'm not sure of the feedback y'all are receiving. I've heard, for the most part, very positive feedback. Of course, there'll be a few folks that say it's inconvenient. Security is inconvenient, but I do think that we have bumped into a couple instances where those security vestibules have worked exactly how they're supposed to be. Of course, we're not talking about somebody trying to barge in or create a scene, but it just prevents entry from somebody who needs to check in. That's exactly what it's for, and yes, it's a little bit inconvenient, but please know that it is working, and we appreciate the campus's focus on that. Also, Emergency Operations Plan, or EOP, just know that that's going to be updated just to make sure we're all in compliance with new state law. That will be a big undertaking, and then sending that off to the state for review. That's one of the first times that this is required in the state. Usually we provide and just work on it with our local providers, but this will take, however the state decides, we'll be sending our EOPs off for periodic reviews, which is nice because that's what the municipal governments do, and just like them, we're responsible for it too. Standard response protocol, we're going to be in year 2. I think it was a great success. I thank the leadership for allowing that protocol to happen. I could tell you just from a good example last year at the Colony High School, when they were in hold for, I believe, 2 hours early in the year, that would have been a lockdown situation. Thank you very much. That would have been a lockdown situation, except we didn't need to go into lockdown, and so that hold worked exactly how it was defined. So one of the big pushes that we're trying to do this year is get our parents to make sure when they hear a lockout or a hold, they need to understand this is business as usual. Now, it's changing a little bit of operations inside the school, but there's no reason for kids to be panicked. There's nothing happening in that school that warrants them to be of concern. Sorry about that. And with that, questions?
Starting with Ms. Crosby.
Well, first of all, reach around, pat yourself on the back, because we were ahead of the curve in the state. And I think that goes directly to your team and the standards and the systems that you've put in place since you've been here. So thank you very much. My question is on the classroom doors.
Okay.
And how are we going to incorporate that into either ed specs or into future construction or our refreshes, etc.? That's to anybody.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first off, it will need to become part of ed specs. I think what we've got to do with our experts in community first responders and Matt and his, we've got to decide what's what's the avenue we want to go down. Whether it's film on, or hardware or whatever. And there's been a big change, I think, as far as the mindset, not only of his group, but I think really across a lot of entities as far as what's the best answer. So once we decide that, then it will need to become part of an ed spec for future.
Well, I'm looking at the current construction we have going on,
Yeah,
and I want to
I get
know
you.
what that looks,
Yeah.
I'll be honest, what does that look like?
So-
Without,
I can tell you, at least on this side of the current Mill Street or something, it's going to have to be done just like the other elementary schools would have to be done. As we go into future projects like Josie, I think we can catch it. But again, we still need to look at exactly what type of film, I try not to get in the weeds too much, but there's specifications for each type of film, and we've got to determine, because everything that we're doing, my big rule is we can't slow down the first responders. We have to find that balance. And so, it continues to look at which exact product we want and then implement. But at a certain point, as we get into certain classrooms that have bigger windows, we're going to have to change our tactic up a little bit. And make sure I say this right, there will be different circumstances for certain situations, and that's why we're going to have to involve a bigger group and a bigger, like possibly an architect or something to design this thing, because the complexities there are great.
So Matt, let me ask you it this way. Getting input from all of our experts in our community, when do we expect to have a sort of a decision? Because, if we had talked 6 months ago, we would have thought really hardware was the answer.
I think it would be fair for a fall, winter, before, end of the year kind of thing. I think we'd have kind of that. And I almost always feel like there's an asterisk to this, though. School safety, and we always are looking at events happening throughout the country and adapting. This is what we feel at this time would be the best solution that would be everlasting, but there could be something that comes 6 years, 6 months, 6 days from now that could change a lot of things. There is so much new products and technology, and it's amazing. Some of the glass that we're putting in our schools didn't exist that long ago, and so what we have to do is just make it a good decision probably around fall, winter, and to get it done, but knowing that down the road there could be something different.
and on the signs for the playground, is that for every play set? Because I know at some of our schools, we have 2 or
Our goal
3.
is to cover entrances and shade structure, or not shade, teacher shelters, something with a hard pole, not a play structure itself, but something that would be close to the playground that I can mount it to. Does that make sense?
Like a build, would you mount it on the building?
It depends on the situation. Sometimes the buildings might be close, but it could be far enough away where the sign wouldn't really serve a purpose like that. But our goal, of course, if there's gates going to a neighborhood or something like that, there'll be one very close to that to catch them as they come in.
Thank you.
Ms. Hassett?
The RFID, what is the frequency that we would control within here that others can't get into?
That is a topic that is complex, but I will say that if it's an RFID solution, it would be a controlled. It's not like a radio frequency, like a push-to-talk kind of situation. But the RFID has certain security codes in it that, as long as we have them, it's kind of like our access cards in some ways. Does that make sense? Our certain ones of these are RFID. Doesn't mean anyone can read them because it's our facilities codes, our security codes, stuff like that. So, but understanding that.
We will be able to track them later, though.
Say that again?
You'll be able to read it later because you'll be able to track students, is what you're looking into.
So, let me make sure I got this right. An RFID reader is typically put in, let's say, an entrance to a school bus. You have to have the reader that's coded with the codes on the cards. So, if you have let's say it's a student ID, that card could be anywhere else in the community. No one's going to read it because they don't have the reader that's going to match that.
Okay.
Makes sense? So when they come on, when they make, close by, that's where it's reading the radio frequency and registering it on that. But we can't track them outside of school.
Say that Sammy is walking from the cafeteria to.
There is some technology like that, but it's depending on how many readers you have to basically, it triangulates, measures distances from certain readers in our schools, if that's a solution that we go with. And again, this is just researching all the possibilities. There's toll tags on kids.
This is very preliminary.
Yeah.
Right, and I get it.
Yeah.
And if we go with a solution like that, are we going to then notify parents that is implemented? I think this is something the parents would want to know.
I can assure you that there will be numerous other discussions before we get to that point.
Very preliminary.
It really is something we're keeping our eye on because it's an emerging technology.
Right.
And I mean, I think down the line there's going to be opportunities to look at how those things work and whether or not they'd be a benefit. And that's something we would bring to you guys as a body before we got too far down the road on it. But we are watching to see. My friend Dr. Bonner over there loves to say it's better to be a settler than a pioneer, and so we're certainly watching to see what folks are doing with that technology and how it can work.
Especially in this area, it's very, very good to be a settler.
Yes.
Is that it? Is that
Okay,
sentence?
one more question. Active shooter training that we have given to almost all of staff at this point, I think it would be great to communicate that to our parents. I think they would feel a sense of calm knowing that their teachers have been trained with all the craziness that is around. I think that's just something that we've done and could be helpful to ease parents' minds.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to know that a lot of our police departments and churches and community members and there's so much of this training actually happening. CRAZE is adopted throughout the state as one of the leading examples of training for active shooter events. And I saw the Colony do free community training based on the same stuff that our teachers were getting. I've seen churches receive it. So it's definitely something it's not scary. It's good information and beneficial.
Ms. Cox?
Okay, Mrs. Hassett got 2 questions, so I'm taking my 2 questions too. To continue Ms. Prosnick's accolades, I remember when you were a department of 1, and so kudos to you, Matt, and your department on all the work they've done. I'm so proud of the board on the decisions we've made to increase the department, the leadership team. I mean, I feel like LASD puts safety first and foremost for our kids, and I'm so proud of our district for that. So I just want to put that out
Can
there.
I add one thing real quick to that?
Yes.
Rebecca Clark and Monia Crow have done an amazing job on the threat assessment team, and I would be remiss to not mention them. I mean, they've led it, and I'm very proud to have be able to work with them on that. So
That's great. Thank you. So my 2 questions are, one is, how are we doing on the doors with the gym, the band, where the kids are letting the kids in on the pop side doors?
We have more cameras, so we are able to watch those. Some of our problem areas, which I will not name, I've not seen them propped. I am aware that Facility Services has an additional project going with the access control to add more sensors, which is a huge component for us. So if a door doesn't have keyless entry, they're adding more contact sensors so we know when a door is open, propped, closed. And that's going to be huge for our monitoring capabilities. Instead of us watching thousands of doors on a camera, now we can just wait for the alarm to pop. And we were just meeting with facilities today about that, about how long I want a door open before our screen pops up. I don't want a million screens popping up. But I do think it's better, although I will say the nature of athletics and band always are the challenging ones. And it's going to be a battle, I think, always. But when the kids know that, and I should say when the kids and staff know that we will find out who propped the door and work with the campus on addressing that, they're going to realize that's why we put cameras on the doors and why we take this seriously. Y'all, the board, the community expect our schools to be safe, and if it takes a 5-cent piece of wood to bypass all this, that's not right, and we need to address it.
I agree. Thank you.
It-
My other question is,
Can I go back to doors real quick, because it's something, Mrs. Prosnick's first question. You know, everything that we continue to read about doors, and you asked that question, a locked classroom door is still among the most powerful deterrents for anyone that would want to do harm. And we do have inside locking classroom doors, and I feel safe saying 100% of our classrooms have those doors. And that's a question that Matt and I continue to talk about all the time when it comes to doors. I know that's different from your question, but doors just keep coming up. And if I've got a microphone in a public forum, and I know there are hundreds watching this meeting right now, those locked classroom doors, they do more to keep our students safe if anyone were to come in and want to do harm than anything else that we've got.
it's good to know. My second question is safety protocols on our buses. How is that training, and who does that, and what safety protocols do we have on our buses?
First Student has a safety manager. I don't want to speak so much to their efforts, but I'm not sure if you have any information, Mr. Ball, but otherwise I could follow up with First Student and get you that information.
Yeah, I would love to know that.
Okay. Ms. Timish? Okay. I have a question. So, for example, at the high school, like when they're walking in, and you've got your ring that is there, but if staff's short-handed on the inside, like I witnessed somebody who was just multiple standing there and nobody knew what to do to like ask to get access, like to where are the signs really placed?
The signage is currently on order. It will be placed in close proximity to the Ring doorbell. I can't speak to the school you're speaking of right now because I'm not sure which one. But
that's totally fine. Yeah, it was just so good. So that was because it was. I mean, I think the poor guy had been standing there a while, and so, but he just didn't know he needed to show his driver's license. But because I guess the intercom wasn't working or they were shorthanded, there wasn't a way to communicate what he needed to do to get in.
if you want to follow up, I mean, give me the name later after the meeting. I'd be glad to follow up. I will say that our campuses have multiple phones, so when the doorbell is pressed, it's not ringing on one phone. It's programmed to ring on numerous phones, and if that's not the situation, we can get that addressed. The software to view the cameras can be on multiple computers. While we are limited, only I believe 3 people can be logged in at one time. 3 people in 3 different locations is more than enough to answer a door. So we can address the training and making sure the systems are working the way that they're supposed to be working.
So then I just happened to catch it. Like I don't, yeah, because that was not what
it's
was
completely
happening.
possible, and honestly, with some of the punch list items, when they're working on it, something might go down, and it's something that's a very complex, large system and a large, spread across a large area. We're working through some challenges, but it could also be training. And honestly, we can follow up with that campus and make sure that they are.
Yeah, because I think that they
system.
didn't realize that it didn't have to be somebody in that specific office, that it could be forwarded to another.
Yeah, forwarded, or some of the phones can be. It's not even forwarded. It's just this phone rings when that button is pressed. So far, I think the problems that I've seen like that are rare, but they could definitely be there, and we're here to address them.
Okay, so how long will it take for the signs to get here?
New construction, I think, said 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, because I mean, I just think sometimes even just having a piece of paper that's laminated next to it would even be just something that we could do, so people know at least ring the bell here, put your ID here.
Let me get with you after to get the school. They have some of the signs that were temporary. I don't know if they've blown off, if the painter's tape didn't hold, but we will get one put up and address that one.
Are we going to come back around, Catherine? Ms. Sells?
Do you have 1 or 2 more?
Just one more.
Just go ahead.
All right, and I have a question which I know that's done at other districts, and I think we've got to refresh me if I'm repeating myself, but for some districts, they've found a lot of success working with the police department and just saying if you ever have to do paperwork or if you ever, they're just asking them to park.
Being done.
Huh?
It's being done.
Okay, so then all of our schools.
Yeah, I would consider that almost normal procedures of just having folks in and around our campuses. I see traffic officers as I drive through at arrival and dismissal times. Our SROs are checking in. Of course, patrol officers park in parking lots as that is happening. And I just got to highlight our Blue Plate Special that we have where, we want uniformed law enforcement in our schools. We provide them free breakfast and free lunch. We're blessed, and I think, they enjoy it too. I love seeing the pictures of them coming for those events, and the kids. I remember one, I think it was Wellington Elementary. Those kids, that made their school year, this kid said. I mean, that's just having lunch next to a police officer, and he felt so special that the officer wanted to sit next to him. And it's just, that's what we're going for. So we keep finding creative ways to involve or have them in and around our schools, whether it's on duty doing something, patrolling the area, but we do have very good coverage and response times, some of the best, I would say, in the area.
So we work with each of our police departments so that they know that if they're really starving, they can just come to any school at any time.
They send it out on their patrol briefings. I get the bills every quarter. It's being used.
Is it used? I'm interested that you get the bill. So is it being used equitably across the district?
Yeah. I would say that, of course, when you look at the size of the police departments, you'll see a different. There's large departments that have more officers, and of course they're a little bit higher. But we have usage at, I think, nearly every elementary school shows at least some usage. Secondaries as well. Lunch is probably more than breakfast, I'll say that. We don't have a lot of folks that, are doing that. I'm not sure if it's shift change time or what, but the program's being used.
Yes.
Lunch is better, yes. That would be good.
And I thank you because I think that Blue Plate Special is so important in our community. I just would want to make sure that all of our elementary schools are getting that touch. So thank you.
And let me just highlight, that's something, while we might talk about it with our police, that's something they're already doing. I mean, I want to highlight school safety is such a priority to them and the communities that we serve. It's a given. I mean, they're in there, they're sending their officers even without us asking. We just kindly always shoot that reminder to them, especially at the beginning of the year and certain times of the year when I know they get busy too. But we've always been a priority for them, and without their support, I mean, it would be a lot more difficult.
Do we communicate that to our parents? Do they know that we do this?
The Blue Plate Special?
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally we do a press release for Blue Plate. I'm not sure if it's gone out this year or not, but I do believe it's gone out once, twice, maybe. And it's something that when we ever get parent questions or something,
I just think that's
we
something,
highlight.
just when principals send out letters, I think that's something really special that we do, and I would love for our parents to know that we do that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Demi. Ms. Lathon?
So the active shooter training, do the people in this building get that training?
Right now, we're focused to try to get the campus staff training. We will have talks about administration very soon, but with the scope of what we're dealing with, the focus right now has definitely been the campuses.
Because I think, I don't know if it would be appropriate or not, but I think it might be for us as a board maybe to get, or to at least sit in on, a training would be interesting.
Yeah, we can definitely try to schedule something for the administrative side. And again, any of this, keep an eye on your local police departments as well from where you live. They're doing this for their communities as well. And for you and your neighbors, it's always something that you can look at too.
One more other quick thing. The dogs, are they sniffing for drugs and explosives or just drugs?
There's numerous items that those dogs are detecting.
Okay.
So yes and yes.
Got it. All right. Okay, that was it for me.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions or comments before I ask? No? Okay. First of all, the dogs, are they only during the school day, or are we having them at athletic events?
We have an option for the athletic events right now, especially since we're still getting the scope of the day. We're changing our schedules quite a bit from the previous vendor because these dogs are very eager. So we're able to do a lot more in less time, and so we can work through some things. There are some discussions for athletic events, but we also have to be conscious about how the dogs work. Our dogs search areas, not people. When we get into an athletic event, there's not much to search other than people, and we can't do that.
But you do include, if you're on a campus, you include the athletic facilities?
We've hit every athletic facility on our first day.
Perfect. The signs that are going on the playgrounds, only 2 languages?
Right now, only 2 languages.
Is there a way, and I don't know, and that would have to be a communications question, but would there be a way to QR code additional languages at some point in time where we could include as many as we could get translated in those 80-plus languages that we...
I think the only downside to that for me is if people know what it is and how to use it. You know, there would be an easy way to explain if you don't read
Right.
these languages. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a if you don't.
Yeah,
have
because
that
there wouldn't be instructions in a language unless they were a kid. And most of our kids know how to use a QR code, and if they're there with a parent.
Put a little picture of the phone and like hieroglyphics.
Right. I'm just wanting to make sure because I would imagine that some of, and I don't know, but there are going to be certain areas that a school playground is probably going to be used by kids who don't have a playground in their backyard. And a lot of times those are going to involve a lot of our different nationalities, different languages, and I just want to make sure that if there was some way, and it's one of those things that I'm not sure being a pioneer, but if there was some way that a school district used that or used some kind of method that we could piggyback on that. And then with the police officers going into campuses, are we including our Lily Jackson little babies?
Yep.
Okay.
Their assigned SRO is Hedrick Middle School, right down the road from them. We have asked all of our elementary, which includes, we kind of lump Lily Jackson into that. At the last principals meeting, have they seen an increase in SRO visits? Of course, we want to see them attend numerous things throughout the week. We had a very strong show of hands, and I can follow up with Lily Jackson, but I feel confident Rock, who's at Hedrick Middle School, has been visiting Lily. I know they've talked to him about traffic, which has been actually much better this year. Took us a little bit of years, but we got that fixed, and we're glad that he's close by there.
And then the other one is our Starfish Cafe kids. And I know some of our Starfish Cafe kids, when you first encounter them, you don't really know that there is a difficulty there, but when they encounter police officers, I know that they know, and they know their role in our community, and I think that they would love to have a visit.
Elizabeth Rollins, assigned to Lewisville Learning Center, is assigned to Purnell and the Starfish Cafe, and especially as plans talk about, ways to interact with them more and get to be involved with them more. It's in progress.
Okay, perfect. I just didn't want them to be left out. And when it comes to being inconvenienced, you can inconvenience me all you want because my daughter's sitting in that front office, and it was a decision that was hard to sign off on. That's what she could be, knowing the climate of our community. But I will tell you that the vestibules was what made me go ahead and say, yeah, that's a choice that you can option.
Amazing products. Those, the brains and the nerves of that school are meant to be able to react and to notify and alert, and very safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to your staff. Does anybody have anything else? Nope.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And moving on, Dr. Coburn.
Okay. This next one is, we actually brought policy FDB to you last year with boundary adjustments because we needed to change some language in there. But while we were doing that, we were actually working on a little bit more holistic look at policy FDB, which is our intra-district transfers. We had a group of principals, and I do want to name them off because they did awesome work last year. Ms. Upshaw, Jeremy Turner, Lavana Ullman, Tina Kroll, Deanna Angonia, Amanda Warnicki, Tony Fontana, and Toby Maxon. So we had you'll notice there's a lot of ninth grade principals in there, a lot of middle school, a lot of those big decision points on transfers, 5 to 6, 8 to 9. We wanted to get their input. What we have created is a rewrite of policy FDB local, and this is kind of a first look for you, and I know you have it in your packet. I could read it word for word, but I really don't think you want me to do that. I'll highlight a few changes for you. We did put the language in about currently enrolled students will only be able to request transfer under the guidelines of this policy during the publicized transfer periods. that, along with some of the requirements about attendance, where we've gotten much more specific, was because it is very time-consuming to pour over the transfers. We processed over 4,000 requests last year, and to pour over all those to see, does this person meet the requirements? And then you want to be customer service oriented, and so someone is applying for a transfer, you know they don't meet any of the requirements, and it's not during the timeline, but kind of the Disney way, you don't want to say, well, no. So we've tried to build some language that will allow us to say, well, the policy would not support applying for a transfer in the middle of the year, so that we can do something about the workload there. We do hope, as we put in the language about number of unexcused or undocumented absences, late arrivals to school was a huge thing with the elementary principals. They said, look, if there's anything that would incentivize the transfer, please can you focus on on-time arrival to elementary school, because it is so disruptive to the elementary day when the students struggle to get there on time. But those are things that are easily tracked in Skyward, and we're actually going to try to work with the team to see if we can figure out a way to run some queries and reports that would allow us to be way more efficient in vetting transfer applicants. We do hope over time that we would have fewer transfer applicants, because we would go with the once you're in transfer policy, whereas the way it's currently written, you've got to reapply as you move from elementary to middle, and again from middle to high. And this would be basically a feeder pattern transfer, that as long as we've got room, and as long as you're meeting the requirements of that transfer, you're going to be able to just stay right on through. We do have some elementaries that go to 2 middle schools. We would make sure that there's a pathway to make sure people understand exactly what their middle school is going to be as they go from 5th to 6th. The default would be the middle school that is the higher percentage feeder in that elementary school. Revocation of transfer was something that came up a lot. The principals wanted to both have a path for revocation of transfer, but also understand that that's really serious when you talk about revoking a transfer. And so actually it's amazing somehow how taking some things that are really complicated can become really simple. We bring it to leadership team, and all of a sudden it becomes very simple. The superintendent or designee is the one that gets to make a decision about whether or not you're going to revoke a transfer. And so that's what we've written in here, because we do believe you should take ownership of a student. If you get them on a transfer, they're your student. The last thing I want to point out in here is that we've got a lot of language in here about safety of students. One of the things that came up is a student that doesn't attend school in their attendance boundary, they're farther from home. And if a situation changes and a parent can't pick that child up anymore, and they're walking 3 miles on their own to get home because I really love that school, and even though we had to move, I want to stay there, well, that's not safe for a child. And that would be an area in which we want to be very clear. We would revoke a transfer under those circumstances, because we have to put the safety of the child first. As much as it would break my heart that you have to say goodbye to your friends, I can't have you walking home 3-4 miles across major roads that don't have crossing guards. And we would take this language then and take any comments that you've got and bring it back to you.
Yeah, and board, we're just trying to, one, make this more customer friendly, and two, make it a little clearer, and the factors, I think they're called factors, we're trying to actually in a couple of areas make them a little less as far as the percentage of attendance. Anyway, like your input, we plan to present this for your approval.
Mrs. Hessen? I did have a question.
Yes.
Factors, second bullet. The new wording that I was wondering what you meant. For purposes of this policy, a note from the parent guardian does not satisfy the documentation requirements. So my kid's been sick and I send a note home. That was an excused absence. So it doesn't count against the student. What documentation are you talking about? What's that mean? Because that's confusing for a parent.
Yeah, it is. The attendance piece is really hard to wrap your head around in a really simple way. It used to just be 95%. And I know I'll get to your answer.
Okay.
I want to go through the thinking. We found that was a really high bar, because if you get the flu once, there's a good chance you're not hitting 95%. So parents were sweating appeal processes and things, and we were going ahead and granting them. So we went with the undocumented, unexcused absence of no more than 4, and that would be just that. There's no note of any kind. There's no excuse of any kind. You just didn't go to school, or you might have asked for permission to go beyond what's allowed, and you might have been told no, and you went anyway. And what we're saying there is that on the 90% rule, just because you've brought a note from home for every one of your absences does not mean that those absences are automatically excused. Because if you recall last year, we discussed the parent notes, and we have a limit in our student handbook of 6 parent notes in a semester, 8 in a year, to excuse illness. The idea being that a kiddo gets the flu, gets pretty sick. We don't want to make people have to go to the doctor every time their child has a fever, but there is a limit we wanted to put on there, because we would have instances where a student would have literally 30, 35 absences, and a parent would say, but I brought a note for every single one. And so that's why we wanted to put that in there specifically.
And remember that medical notes don't count as absences at all, as
Right.
far as.
But if my son is sick, I can write a note.
If they've gone to the dentist and they bring back a medical note, that's not an absence.
Yes, if you write a note because your child was sick, it is excused up to 6 in a semester and 8 in a year. And then after that, you get into, now we're into the attendance policies and attendance for credit and
And that's
review
where that
panels.
one line comes into play. Otherwise, my note does count.
Yes.
It's just a little.
All right, we'll take another look at it. I appreciate the input on that.
Ms. Cox?
Just a comment, I'm very appreciative of the new policy changes, and I like the flexibility, and that we're, as Dr. Rogers said, we're being more customer friendly, so I think it definitely, adheres to that, so thank you.
Same, I concur. Thank you.
I have a question, because it was something that was kind of brought to me that I in turn brought to you, about grades. So, when they're looking at, so it says passing all subjects, because as you know, like, you could get a bad grade your first part of the 9 weeks, and you fail a test, and that's when they look at your grades, but you're not going to fail for the year. That would be, because that did happen to a friend of mine, and she was initially denied, and it caused a whole lot of anxiety. But anyway, so how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think we want to add the specificity, because we look at semester and year averages. So, no, if at a point in time a child's failing a class because there's only 3 grades and one of them was the assignment that they forgot to bring to school, that doesn't preclude you from being granted a transfer. The other thing too is that we will continue to listen with great intent on people's requests to have their denied transfers appealed, and we like to say yes, but we want to just keep some measures in place where it's not just everybody can go.
Yeah, cool.
Ms. Prosnick?
Okay, I've got quite a few. So my question is, why is there not a reference to capacity? There's not an actual reference to what a school has to be at to be considered at capacity.
Yeah, and that's why we used space availability as determined by administration, because that is for us it's a moving target.
Right.
Because in the fall transfer window, we're looking at capacity differently than we are in the spring transfer window. And so rather than try to explain, when you apply for a transfer pre-staffing, it's based on the total number of bodies that we can fit into the school, but afterwards it's based on how we've staffed the campus based on the staffing numbers that we had. We decided to write as determined by administration. And I certainly do have that conversation with families. And we have some popular schools and some schools.
So how does that look if I want to get a transfer into an elementary that has capacity in 5th grade, but there's no capacity once we get to the middle school?
And that's where we've written in
Right, that can be revoked. And so I understand the idea of being customer friendly, but I don't know how that looks to a parent to get it and then have it denied when there was not a capacity. Does that make sense?
Yes, and we're fortunately in a position where I think, as we talked through this actually with the group, and we talked about, do we even want to include that in there? And if you worked in Galveston County when Hurricane Katrina hit, you know the capacity can change instantly when things like that happen. And I'll be honest with you, that's the exact instance that I used in saying, well, there is an opportunity that we could suddenly say, gosh, we have to do something to. I do not anticipate that we would ever want to exercise that. The intent is 100% that if a student gets into a feeder pattern, we want to let them stay. That's what you guys have mentioned to us now for a year.
Yeah, I don't see, Ms. Prodnick, that would be an issue. One, we don't run into
Well,
class.
it's in the policy, which is
Yeah,
why I asked.
no, I get you. I mean, I understand that it gives us that flexibility, but I don't see that would be a very common practice unless we were talking about a school like McCamey 5 years ago that had 1,100 kids or something. Because in a middle school, we don't have 22 to 1 and all that. Another kid here or there is not going to really.
And I do think too, if we ever got into a position, because as we look at our middle schools right now, for example, we don't see anything from Templeton that says we're going to run into the McCamey 5 years ago scenario. And I think if we see that on the horizon, it would maybe give us some pause to take another look at this policy, which because it's a local, you guys can look at anytime.
Well, there are 3 middle schools that are currently are too full to accept transfers that are on our website right now. So that's where that comes from. And if that's going to change, that's great. I'm just, I just have the information that I could gather. And then one of the other parts is assurances from the student that there will be a safe and timely transportation available. Isn't that already part of the application? That we won't provide transportation, that they sign off on that. So is we had an instance of this?
They sign off on an understanding that we don't provide transportation. Right. We really put this in as a precursor for the later language about safety and security, and so that we can have conversations with families of, do you have a means of getting your child in that? And we've actually talked about adding that to the transfer application, that you understand you have the means to safely make sure your child gets to and from school. But where we have seen it anecdotally is that people's situation changes, but they don't want their child to have to change schools. And
so we're not going to have it. That's not going to be a signed document as part of the.
No, I think that is going to. We're going to include that in the application. We wanted to get this in front of you first. The reason we're bringing it now, November, fall transfer window, so we want plenty of time to be able to modify things based on what we have here.
And the only thing I did not see in the policy is an appeal process. That there is no transfer appeal process if they're denied.
The transfer appeal process, it has never been in the policy. It has always been an administrative regulation that comes in with the transfer letter. You get a denial letter and it says, here's your next step. So.
I guess
Which is to Dr. Coe.
Yeah.
It just goes to you, and
Well, a parent could always, file it as a grievance and work to the board. That's never been a problem. I don't know that it's ever really risen to that, at least in my experience, and I used to deal with it before Joe.
I guess I just question whether or not in policy there should be something that says that there is an appeal process.
What he's saying is the grievance is in policy, and that's the route that they go.
Okay. Does anybody have any additional comments or questions, or not asked? The middle school policy, where they will be notified in the middle of the year.
Their 5th grade.
Do they not have, is there not a means for the application, and I guess maybe they don't know at that point because they might not know, but I could imagine that there might be an issue based on something else that they think they're going somewhere, and I just want to make sure that that part's customer friendly too.
Yeah, there's a few things there. Number one, we've already discussed, if you play around on the current website, you'll see, the feeder pattern thing already exists where you can see. We want to build the same thing on transfers and obviously emphasize those elementaries that go to two different middle schools. But just to make sure everybody knows what they're signing up for. If I'm signing up my 4-year-old and this is my oldest child and I'm making a 13-year commitment, I'm not really, because I can always go back to my own school, but I'm making a 13-year commitment. I want to make sure they know what it is. The other one is that really we have looked at making sure that we've got fail-safes for all of our 5th graders so that no 5th grader is confused about what middle school they go to. It is the one place in which our kids can go in 2 different directions. And we want to make sure process is way beyond transfers, that we just never have a 5th grader that goes, well, I could have sworn all year that I was a Shadow Ridge student, and now you're telling me I'm a McCain student. That's what we want.
So the same communication, or the communication is everlasting with these parents as far as them knowing that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my question was appeals too, and I do know that there's appeal process. I didn't know that it follows the grievance pathway, and so I
think there's been a big shift probably in the last 5+ years, and particularly the last couple years, is that we are really trying every chance we can to say yes, and we want to say yes. I mean, we just can't do it if it means we're going to have to hire another 2nd grade teacher because we go over, but if there's a way we can, we're going to say yes.
And I think my concern is some of the restrictions that are placed on these kids. I think sometimes their surroundings is what makes them not successful. And so I want to make sure that we are not losing a child to a love of education because our restrictions are such that we are not allowing them the opportunity to succeed, maybe not where we choose for them to be, but maybe where they would be excited about being. And so just want to make sure that we're not letting, and I certainly don't want to lose any children or any students to other avenues of education because we're not allowing their parents or even their little voices to be heard. And so, and I know that has been an issue in the past, and I appreciate the work that y'all have done and allowing those students to have that opportunity to be successful. And we'll see, that. But I can imagine if you're where you don't want to be, that some of these things are just never gonna work. So thank y'all. And I do appreciate the changes, and especially that feeder pattern for life, or that pathway for life, for better words. I think that can make a child in elementary, or even if they've transferred in middle, really get in there and be whatever they are going to be, whether it be a marauder, a jaguar, a cougar, or a farmer, or a hawk, that they can see a light and that into the tunnel. I mean, they're all working toward 12th grade, So, okay, well, thank you all. Is there anything else from anybody else? And if there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 9:03 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Bye, Mr. Ball.
Take the cookie on your way out.
No, those are Angie's cookies.